Thanks. We'll call the meeting to order. Thanks, everyone. So we have a packed house, I know, again, and but the good news is we have a relatively short executive session, public hearing. We're going to finish up the first Fairfield University matter, which we didn't quite finish after we told all the Post Road people to go home. But public hearing's closed, so we just have rebuttal. Then I will see how many people are here for the other Fairfield U matters. Just by show of hands, how many people are here for the Post Road matter? And how many people are here for the Fairfield University, the other two matters that are on, not the one we started last time? Yeah. Okay. So nobody. All right. So those other two matters are probably going to be, and I'll talk to Mr. Fallon, but pretty quick. So we'll move it along, and we'll get to you as soon as possible. So let's start with the executive session. Bills and Communications meeting minutes, October 9th, 2018.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Francis.
I'll second.
And second by Commissioner McAleese. Commissioner Francis, your eagle eye, catch any mistakes?
I did not.
Okay. I didn't either. All good?
All good, yep.
All right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? The minutes are approved unanimously. Next is 226 Old Post Road, request of Equinox Fitness for 100% release of a $26,650 bond pertaining to special permit improvements in the Design Industrial District.
Mr. Chairman, this is the recently completed additions to Equinox. You do have a report in your file from the Engineering Department recommending 100% bond release, to which we agree.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll make a motion to release the bond based on the town engineer's recommendation.
Motion to approve by Commissioner McAleese.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Corcoran. Any other comments?
No.
Any comments? Very good. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Bond is released entirely, unanimously. Next is 5550 Congress Street. Request of Attorney John Fallon for a 90-day extension for filing a final subdivision map.
This was a two-lot subdivision approved on July 28th of this year. This is the first of two possible 90-day extensions to record the map.
Okay, thank you. So that's as of right.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner McAleese.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Francis. McAleese and Francis. Any comment?
Just since it's as of right, there's no reason to not approve.
Correct. Anyone else? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? The request is approved unanimously. Next is 110 Woodrow Avenue, request of Ward Jennings for a 5-year extension of a special permit pertaining to a 2-story office building in the Design Commercial District.
This was a project that was approved on October 27th of '09. Woodrow, it's on the corner of Woodrow in Pease Avenues. As you come down exit 19 there's an empty lot just beyond the building that's got the Indian restaurant and the dog grooming facility. There's a 2-story office building approved there. Obviously nothing has moved forward at this point. They're up against the 9-year statutory expiration date with an eligibility for 5 years of extension.
Right, and that first 5 years is as of right.
Correct.
Yep.
Just to ask a question, is that the lot that's like a kind of a parking area now to the left of that building? Okay.
Yes.
Oh.
Motion to approve is as of right.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner McAleese, second by Commissioner Francis.
That's what I said.
That was my question, but you think it's discretionary?
It's discretionary to the extent that circumstances or regulations may have changed in that intervening period that may have had an impact on that proposal. If you've adopted a change to the regulations, for example, that modified the provision of the regulations that this plan would no longer comply with, then yes. But in this case, that's not the case. So yes, the length of time is discretionary on your part. You can have up to 5 years. If you're not required to grant 5 years.
Right, and there would need to be a basis for denial such that it would no longer comply with our regulations.
Correct. Right.
Okay.
So for the record then, instead of as of right, motion to approve based on administration
Yep.
recommendation.
Yeah, so the motion doesn't change, but
Okay.
your basis for granting it is that, you know, the regulations haven't changed, and remains a compliant.
Right, okay.
Okay. Any other comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the request is granted unanimously. Next is new applications to recommend a public hearing. First is 1521 Beacon View Drive, compliance application of John and Dillon LLC pertaining to a 27-unit residential development pursuant to Section 830G of the Connecticut General Statutes in an R3 zone.
That's correct. I don't have anything beyond that, other than this application, it's not required to go to public hearing, but every similar application to it has been, so it's your discretion as to whether or not to hold a hearing on this matter.
Okay. Can I have a motion? Yep. Motion to approve the public hearing?
Yes.
Okay. Motion to move to public hearing by Commissioner Corcoran.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Noonan.
Is this near the other, don't we have another 830G on Beacon View?
There is a, yes, there's a 9-unit development on Beacon View. This is kind of, Beacon View is kind of a loop street over by Campfield, so it's in the same neighborhood, not adjacent, but in the same neighborhood.
Is it are they visible from each other, do you know? I just don't know.
I don't know how many lots are in between, but it's in the,
27 units. How many floors?
it's 2 floors above a parking structure. Or 3. It's 3 floors. 3 floors of occupied space
Right.
below a parking.
40 feet.
Yep.
Something like there. Okay. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Motion is to move to public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Move to public hearing unanimously. Next is old business, 1008 Fairfield Beach Road, special exception and coastal site plan application of Matthew Needle pertaining to the construction of a single-family dwelling with rooftop deck, Beach District.
This matter was heard at public hearing at our last meeting. The reason it was a public hearing is because there's a deck at the highest roof of this building, which required a special exception application. Otherwise, the application is in full compliance with the Beach District regulations. There was a coastal site plan submitted in a report from our department along with that recommends its approval.
Okay. Good. Can I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Noonan,
I'll second.
second by Commissioner Corcoran. Commissioner Noonan?
Based on staff recommendation, or at least advisement that it meets the regulations, I see no reason to deny it.
I agree.
Okay. Yeah, this is one I'll note where no members of the public were here,
Correct.
right? Yeah. And the individual applicant moved the item. So on these, just in the future, I mean, there could be some public comment with respect to roof decks that are above, a certain height, where neighbors or, joiners might have some question or say in how the plans are being presented, but no one here objected to anything, so. Okay, motion is to approve. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the compliance is approved unanimously, or special exception and coastal site plan application is approved unanimously. Compliances are next. 23 Sherman Street, application of Michael Fazio for an overall sign plan in the Center Design District.
This, Mr. Chairman, is a 3-story mixed-use building nearing completion on 23 Sherman Street. What's before you is the kind of the sample sign plan. We don't have any identified tenants, but what the applicant is proposing is a unified plan that would either be stud-mounted acrylic or metal letters. It's in the Center Design District, so interior illumination of signage is not permitted. So they are just giving you the prototype sign plan so that once tenants are secured, they can come in and get individual permits from us for those individual tenants, but with the prototype that they're proposing.
Very good, thank you. Can I have a motion? Commissioner Francis, motion?
Move to approve. I hope the numbers are going to be on it, though.
Okay. Motion to approve by Commissioner Francis,
Second.
second by Commissioner Noonan. Did you have something, some comments?
The address, the street address numbers we like on our buildings.
The street address is required on a pylon
Yeah.
sign. It's not required on a wall sign.
It's not required that the building be identified as a street address.
It is not. Only if, we require a street address on a freestanding sign.
Right, but like if you go walk down the brick walk and each of the individual, commercial doors have a sign identifying the name of the retailer, each one of those does not have the address of the business on each of those, but you've got the freestanding sign identifying the brick walk with the address and all of the individual tenants on it.
I've lived in other places where the fire department requires every building to have a,
Well, there are municipalities and cities that require that by ordinance, mainly for emergency response. They certainly can have it, but our sign code doesn't require it.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I agree with you. In the book walk, I wouldn't want everyone
Yeah.
to have its number. Sure. But I think this freestanding building, maybe it doesn't need a number.
Very long.
Maybe, this being a freestanding building, I think should have its name turned on. I think should have street numbers, address numbers.
Well, okay.
This is that new building next to Toto's.
Well,
We can
it
certainly
is.
recommend that to the applicant.
Yeah.
I don't think we can require it.
So you're asking, the difficulty here, Commissioner Francis, with what you're asking is that what you're asking for is not required by our regulations presently. If they put up a sign that identifies the building, then they have to put up a number, and they have to identify the building by number. But with respect to the individual signs above the tenant signs, they don't. But of course, I think the building, they want to identify themselves, right?
I mean, they could put the number on the glass door.
They could put the number on the building in a number of ways to do it. We don't consider that in itself to be a sign. They don't need our approval to do that. So they're free to identify the address on the building, and we can certainly recommend that they do so. I just don't think you can make it a condition of this approval.
All right. So you want to amend your motion to approve with a recommendation that they add a street number?
Provide building numbers, street numbers. Sure. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So amended. And that was Commissioner Noonan, right? You agree?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay. Commissioner Noonan agrees.
It's a recommendation I heard, though?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Recommendation, not a condition.
May I ask a quick question to staff?
Yep.
I take it, as I understood it, what they're proposing is in our regulations. It matches compliance-wise.
Correct. The thrust of the overall sign plan is when you have multiple tenants, that we have consistency amongst the tenants, so that they have similar style signs. So that's really what they're showing us. And each tenant, they're restricted to 20% of their tenant space or a certain square footage, whatever is less, and they'll have to.
So we approve it tonight, then they come back when they have a specific tenant and make
Correct.
sure that everything else, then it's staff approval at that point?
Correct.
There's no issue with number of letters they get if it's a long name versus a short name?
Nope, as long as it meets the size criteria, it would be permitted.
Thank you.
Any further comments? Anybody else have any other questions? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. Next is 1140 Fairfield Beach Road. It's a coastal site plan application of 470 Main Street, LLC, pertaining to the construction of a single-family dwelling in the Beach District.
You've got the plans and the staff report in front of you for this. Also important is there's an email from, this has been referred, since it's a waterfront site, was referred to Connecticut Department of Environmental Energy Protection, and you've got an email saying that they find no inconsistencies with the coastal use policies. otherwise meets the beach district criteria, and we agree that it's consistent with the coastal area management policies.
Okay, thank you.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Noonan,
I'll second.
second by Commissioner Corcoran. Second by Corcoran.
Based on staff comments and the or at least the advice from DEEP, I see no reason to deny.
Okay. Yeah, the DEEP states that the plan is consistent with all the regulations. Yes,
Do we-
Mr. McLeese.
Excuse me. I seem to remember in the past, we've also added on that comment that's in the plan review.
Yeah, with respect to
Consistent with erosion
the
control.
erosion control, yes,
All
that's kind of a standard.
That's bullet point,
condition.
okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Sure.
Commissioner Corcoran.
For Mr. Nguyen, there doesn't seem to be any parking indicated on the plan. Is there a requirement for parking?
Yes.
Underneath.
There's the building, this is an elevated building, and they're proposing to park underneath it.
Does it say parking? Because I'm
Yeah,
not sure it's
right
wide
there.
enough.
I don't have a scale with me.
Oh, it says parking.
It's on one of the sheets.
It's probably, it's pretty tight. It's like 12 feet wide, maybe. I don't have a scale.
Oh, I can see it right here. So one parking space is adequate?
Well, it's likely going to be more of a tandem situation where there's enough length to stack two cars, but you don't have enough width for it's not two cars in width.
They didn't give us a floor plan for the,
It's up here, but there's no dimensions. The grade level foundation plan up at the top left.
oh, I see.
But you need at least 10 feet.
Yeah, it looks like there's more than,
There's enough depth. It's the foundation. It's 15 feet by 35 feet in depth.
yeah, the house is 15 feet wide. And there are two step backs there. Well, it looks like it's just 10 feet,
Yep.
but if that's adequate, good.
There's 10.
Circular staircase.
Yeah, it goes from the second to the third floor.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, the plans are consistent with me.
It's a snug fit. They got 10 feet, but I wouldn't want to park my car there. But anyway, it's not my house.
Not my problem.
Minimum aisle, minimum parking.
Yep.
Your minimum parking space width is 9 feet, so
Yeah.
it's
We got 10, so.
it depends on the size car you got
Right.
and how flexible your rear view mirrors are.
Any other questions? The motion is to approve. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Compliance is approved unanimously. Okay, thanks, everybody.
Sure.
All right, so next, we're going to move to public hearing. The first is 1073 North Benson Road, special exception application of Fairfield University pertaining to the proposed student townhouses in the AA zone. And this is the applicant's rebuttal period. Public hearing is closed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. For the record, my name is John Fallon. I'm going to briefly try to summarize and rebut some comments and make some points and hopefully move us on to the next matter fairly expeditiously. First thing I want to do is thank the commission on behalf of Fairfield University for your time, your volunteer service, your attention to this application. As I start this off, and I've appeared so many times before before you on behalf of Fairfield U, I think it's important to talk about two underlying commitments that we always bring to our presentations and our proposals to you. One is we have great pride in our campus, in its beautification. Fairfield was recently honored as one of the nation's most beautiful campuses, and I think that's well deserved. And the people who you met during the last hearing, David Frasinelli and Jen Anderson and the rest of our team, have a lot to do with that. The second thing that I think is even more important in terms of this particular application is prioritizing being a good neighbor, taking care to ensure that no proposed development, including this one that I summarize on tonight, will have an adverse impact on any of our surrounding residential neighbors. That certainly is something we worked very hard at here. I think there was a question to our architect at the last hearing about, did we think about making a more perpendicular the townhouses along Round Hill Road. We determined not to do that because we felt we could better fit them into the landscape of the campus by doing it the way we did it. I suppose if there was one home that has any impact relative to the proposal, it's probably our president's house, directly across the street. But we have always, and we will continue, to quickly respond to neighbor concerns and to continue to address them whether or not and when they are, whether it means we're going to add plantings, paving sidewalks, trimming bushes, trees, being hypersensitive to special lighting to ensure no adverse impact. That's in our interest to do it. It's the way, as a Jesuit institution, we approach our relationship with our neighbors. I heard comments during the last hearing about property values. And I think as a result of the commitment that we have made to maintain and manage our campus, it's important to note that surrounding neighborhoods have in fact benefited in terms of property values, from the presence of the university. You only have to look at the Fairfield Citizen on any given Friday in the real estate section to look at desirable university area, as it says in so many ads. You have a letter in your record from Jackie Piccirillo, a very experienced real estate agent in this community, that I think underscores this. Having said all that, and subject to some comments I'll make momentarily, we are absolutely comfortable with, and being consistent with the approach I just laid out for you, any conditions of approval with regard to further screening of our property as it relates to this development, that the commission feels would enhance the project, more protect the neighbors, and be something the commission deems to be beneficial. We value our relationship with this commission, and we continue to want to make sure we work constructively. So anything that you see, subject to what I'm going to talk about in a minute, that would still require additional screening or benefit from additional screening, we're amenable to that as a condition of approval. I think it's also important to point out in these proceedings that since I came to Fairfield University in 1967, yes indeed, don't do the math please, we've many years had student housing very proximate to the residential properties on what I will refer to as Upper Round Hill Road. And these structures, more typical dormitories with their attendant parking and their height and their design, all with large parking lots, have not had any adverse impact on the upper portion of Round Hill Road or our adjacent neighbors. Similarly, for many decades, we've had the townhouses up on North Benson Road, and despite a comment that was made, and I think your staff will confirm this in work session, we've coexisted with our North Benson Road neighbors very happily and amicably, and the town has not been burdened through your zoning department with any insinuations or complaints from our North Benson Road neighbors based upon the presence for almost 4 decades of the townhouses off of North Benson. I know in your diligence you've probably been out to the site, you've looked at our graphics that we have submitted at the hearing, and I hope you will agree, looking at all that the statements that somehow there's going to be direct impact relative to our neighbors is just not the case. There were comments about noise pollution. Let me underscore again that all of these dwellings are air-conditioned. There are no outdoor areas of assembly or large decks. And again, I would point out that these townhouses, if they are adjacent to any residential properties, most specifically, it would fall on them being adjacent to the president's house. So I think the neighbors can feel certain that there'll be special consideration given to the quiet enjoyment of the property of the surrounding neighbors. But that's our policy anyway. That's why we haven't had a problem on Round Hill Road, Upper Round Hill Road. That's why we haven't had a problem over 4 decades with the townhouses on North Benson. There'll be no light pollution. We have submitted a photometric analysis. We've carefully chosen the lighting and the fixtures to ensure that it would be low level and in total compliance with the provisions of your regulations. There were some statements attributed to the president that were perhaps unintentionally misinterpreted with regard to the matter of growth of the student population. If you review that material, you'll find that the president's statements were referencing the university's desire for some growth in graduate programs. You also heard testimony from Jen Anderson, which is consistent with the very study that I think it was Mr. Pinson referenced, that indicates that our focused desired undergraduate population is 4,000 students. And this is totally consistent with Ms. Anderson's testimony that we target our undergraduate enrollment to be about 1,000 per class. And as I pointed out in the hearing, that's always been our policy, and it's because it serves us well. We have grown in reputation and stature because we have focused on our educational mission, taking into consideration that that is our desired undergraduate population. There were comments, I believe, made by Mr. Malone with regard to elevated views. I would ask you to consider that these elevated views consist of a maintenance facility, mafia block storage area, equipment storage, gasoline facility, and bright lights. We feel that our proposal is a substantial visual upgrade to that area, and that the use of the property is more harmonious to the nearby residences which exist on Round Hill Road. I would emphasize that there'll be no change in the current use of the fields. They will be unchanged, and they'll be continued to be used as they are now for university programs. And I might add, the town and many organizations from time to time have access to our facilities, whether it's the Ludlow Boys Soccer Sticks for Soldiers event at the university that's recently been held, or other things like that. But beyond that, there's nothing here involving this townhouse application that's going to change the use of the fields. I would submit to you that the conclusions of Mr. Galante in his report are founded in basic logic and are really indisputable. That if we bring more existing students back to the campus from current off-campus dwellings, that is going to reduce off-site traffic and the number of trips to the campus. That's simply a fact, and we believe it's been evidenced and benefited in before by other dormitories which you've recently approved, and which I think we have the support of a good segment of the community in doing, because it alleviates concerns and considerations, especially in the Fairfield beach area. Now, having said all that, I started, as I come to a finish, to say that we prioritize dealing respectfully, sensitively, and concretely with our neighbors. We heard, and in the spirit of that commitment of wanting to work cooperatively and constructively with the commission and our neighbors, we heard the concerns raised at the October 9th hearing with regard to the proposed new 69-space parking lot. We went back, we evaluated our parking needs, the options that we might have in order to address that concern. Having done that, and for reasons I'll elaborate on briefly, I want to indicate for the record that we would agree to a condition of approval of this application that would require the total elimination of that 69-space lot as proposed on the site plan. Not reduced, eliminated, remaining in its status quo. How can we do that? Well, we went back and we looked at and reflected on our plan, and we became focused on the fact that parking adjacent to the current Dolan School of Business has always significantly exceeded substantially the need for the Dolan School at that location, and that we have a parking area of 213 spaces. A walk from where I stand to where my car is parked relative to the new townhouses and the lot I'm referring to. The current Dolan facility, thanks to your good graces in approving the new Dolan School of Business, will become totally vacant in June. And we have no current plans, but at some point we will want to repurpose it. When we've determined that based upon the factors that I said, we've determined that we can dedicate the 69 spaces that we would lose by eliminating the proposed lot in the current Dolan lot for the use by the townhouse residences, and we will have no problem with that. Now, if and when it is determined to what use the Dolan structure will be repurposed, and if it is determined internally and after discussions with staff that additional parking is required for that use, although I doubt that will happen, but it could, we will of course have to file a new application with this commission with regard to the proposal to address the repurposed Dolan School of Business and any additional parking that we want to supplement that with.
We'll just call that a reservation of rights.
Correct. And not only, but it's a reservation of our obligations to you, because we can't add parking on our campus.
Any
without-
plan would have to come back to us, and
Right.
it would be fully vetted.
Right.
But for now, the intention is that it's not necessary, and that would remain a field.
Right. So that's the condition of approval, and we do that in the spirit that is so important to this university, with this commission and our reputation and our relationship with the commission, and with our neighbors and our reputation and relationship that we have and want to maintain with the neighbors. I came to this campus in this town 40 years ago. It's totally impacted my life, both the town of Fairfield and Fairfield University, and both have so benefited from one another. The university has been able to grow in stature and vibrance because it's located in the town of Fairfield, and Fairfield has been able to reach heights of vibrance and economic development that I think have been greatly benefited by Fairfield U. We want to continue that relationship, but in order to do that and assure our continued success so that we can bring that commitment and that contribution to the town of Fairfield, we have to maintain facilities that meet the needs, the requirements, the demands, if you will, of a very competitive student marketplace. Not only do these townhouses benefit the interest of the university and the community by bringing more students back to the campus, but they provide a housing product with their independence and their ambiance that is just what the student of today that we continue to need to attract demands. So we hope that with the reconsideration of the need of the parking lot, you will agree that this application is fair, reasonable, and a win-win for the town of Fairfield and the university, and that we can all leave here tonight with an understanding that this is the way land use is supposed to work. We have hearings, people come forward, they speak, the applicant goes back, and if it's within their power, tries to address in a positive manner the concerns and considerations that were heard. So we thank you for being the catalyst for that, and as I said at the beginning, for your attention and time.
Very good.
Thank you.
Very good. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Fallon?
Not after that condition of approval.
Commissioner Corcoran?
Mr. Fallon, one of the neighbors across the street who was uphill, in other words, off of the map we have here,
Yes.
he was concerned that he was going to have a direct view. I was looking at that, and right now with the leaves on the trees, it's not so direct, but I can imagine with the leaves off the trees, it might be direct. So if you were saying that you would be willing to put in additional screening from his point of view, and
Yeah, if we can address, that was Mr. Malone, I think, and beyond the comment that I made about what he's looking at now as opposed to what he will be looking at, the comment I made about additional screening, if there's anything that we can do. The only concern or consideration I'd ask you to consider when you work session is the change in elevation. So that, you know, I can't build 40-foot pine trees, but if there are other things that I can do that you perceive that would help his consideration, we'd certainly want to do that.
Yeah, from when I was looking there today, it appeared that there wasn't that much change. Actually, he's a little higher. If you were looking down at the buildings, it wouldn't take very big trees to climb.
Open-minded to it.
And I think that the only comments, well, not the only, but the comments we had with the criticisms on a technical level with the plan were, I think, all related to the parking lot,
Right,
which is
Mr.
now
Fain's comments.
being proposed
Correct,
to be
which now we're
eliminated.
eliminating.
Right.
I'm good. Thank you.
Commissioner Francis?
The roof height of the buildings you're taking down is really about the same as what you're building, isn't it?
Correct, that's
Yeah,
my knowledge, yes.
Except for the steeple.
Correct.
It's not going to be any higher.
Correct.
Very good. Anyone else? Yep.
There is a letter that states that there's historic buildings going to be torn down. Is that a fact?
Yeah, in our, you know, with all due respect to the writer, and I don't know if the writer was writing with authorization of his board or not, but that's neither here nor there. The fact is, the barn is not historic. The barn is old.
How old?
But it's been utilized since I came to the campus as a high-level maintenance facility, as I expressed earlier. So respectfully, we recognize and have a tremendous sensitivity to the elements of our campus that are historical. Bellarmine Hall has historic characteristics. It has some historic designation. We spent a great deal of time, effort, and sensitivity and money to restore that to where it is. The barn simply does not fall within.
Do you
that.
know how old that barn is?
I don't offhand, but it's old. It's old. It's older than me, so that's old.
That's pretty old.
That's old.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, very good. I'll close the public hearing on this item. Thank you. The next item on our agenda, oh, where'd my agenda go? This is going to go, here we go. Got it, thank you. The next two items are also Fairfield U applications. I promised the Old Post Road folks that I was going to get to them first, not realizing that we would have a carryover. There's nobody here. Is anyone now, I'll say it again, by show of hand, is there anyone here on the other Fairfield University applications? No.
Back left.
Okay.
I saw somebody in the back.
One hand? One hand. Very good. Very good. How long, Mr. Brown? Really? Okay. All right, then I am going to call those to get those out off the agenda to get them done. First is 1073 North Benson Road, special exception application of Fairfield University pertaining to the construction of a batting cage building in AA zone.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I said, the application before you, as explained in my statement of use, involves a construction of a baseball batting facility to be located on the plans as shown. Mr. Kurt Krasinski, who is the Director of Capital Planning for the university, will very quickly, in a moment, orient you to the site. What this new facility will allow is for batting practice to proceed for both the men's baseball and the women's softball teams during periods of inclement weather, being those types of sports programs located in Northeast. That's important. It will also allow for year-round batting practice for both teams. As an indoor venue, the batting facility will provide an opportunity for practice hours that otherwise would not be available without the need for any exterior lighting during periods of darkness or dust. And of course, no noise because everything will be internalized. So that in addition to this benefiting the interests of our student athletes, it will also, we think, have benefits with regard to our neighbors because it's going to internalize activities that are now external. I would just ask Mr. Krasinski just to quickly orient you to the site and answer any questions you might have.
Good evening. Kirk Kuczynski from Fairfield University Facilities Department. David's holding up the site plan of our campus. Just for orientation, the batting facility is located up by our existing baseball field in the right field area. There are 2 existing batting cages in that area now. This building, for the most part, will just enclose those 2 cages. As John mentioned, it'll service both men's baseball and women's softball. This will greatly improve practice time, especially in February and March. Right now, those 2 teams practice in the Walsh Athletic Center gymnasium. Netting has to be dropped from the ceiling. It impacts scheduling with our basketball program, so this will be a home for both softball and baseball. Briefly, the details on the building: we're working with a pre-engineered metal building company. The building is 84 feet by 44 feet, and it's 23 feet high to the ridge. It's approximately 3,800 square feet. As I noted, it will enclose 2 15 feet wide by 70 feet long by 15 foot high netted batting tunnels. The baseball program refers to them. I mentioned the scheduling pressure that we have in Walsh, the fact that it will be heated for preseason use in February and March before the programs get outside in the spring. That's pretty much all the information I have. I can answer any quick questions you might have.
Thank you, Kurt. I just also want to point out we did run this by prior to filing with our College Park representative neighbors. So, any questions, we'd be happy to answer.
So, you had a meeting with the neighbors, and were there any...
On all the
any
projects, including this one.
Right. Were there any concerns expressed on this?
No, not to my knowledge.
Okay. Thank you.
Is it
Mr.
air
Francis.
conditioned or also?
Is it air conditioned, Kurt?
It is not. We're putting in overhead doors on both the north-facing and south-facing elevations for airflow through. We might put a couple paddle fans up, but it is not air-conditioned.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want it to be air conditioned.
A good sweat.
All right. Any other questions? Okay. Is there any member of the public that wishes to be heard on this item? Going once, going twice? Okay. With that, then no rebuttal. Close the public hearing on this item. Next is 1073 North Benson Road, special exception application of Fairfield University pertaining to an addition to the central utilities facility in a double A zone.
Again, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, I'm John Fallon. This application, you may be familiar, and in a minute I'm going to call on Joe Simeone, our project manager at Fairfield University, to kind of orient you, but there's an existing central utilities facility located in the heart of the campus you approved many years ago. This is a small addition to that building that will allow us for some additional space where we can relocate the university electricians. This also will allow for some closer collaboration between the mechanical and electrical trades that typically work on campus, usually on the same projects. It's also going to provide some additional space for some shared storage facilities, a shared break area, and access to the campus-wide building management system. So basically what this is a small addition to an already not too large facility in our campus that's located in a very central location. Joe, do you want to just orient this?
Good evening, my name is Joe Simeone. I'm a project architect with the university. The new addition is off of North Benson Road. It's opposite the Gill Road entrance into the university. So you go down past the rear of Puck Academy. This is the main entrance. We're coming down this road right here. The central facility unit is in here. The addition is approximately 1,700 square feet. It'll be on the north side, and it'll be on the back of the berm where there's a parking lot as you drive in on the left. It's one story. It'll be tucked behind the berm. Really isn't visible from North Benson Road. Won't be even too noticeable from campus. The architecture is the same as the existing building. Same brick, same window detailing, everything will be similar, and we're combining the existing entrance into the present central facility unit with this, so we'll still have only one entrance into the building.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, very good. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Fallon or the architect? Okay, very good. Any member of the public wish to be heard on this item? Going once, going twice. Okay, we'll close the public hearing on this item. Thank you, and thank you everyone on Post Road for being so patient and letting us get through those. So next item is 766 and 780 Old Post Road, zone change application of Old Post Village LLC to establish a designed residence district on land presently zoned Residence A in an R3 zone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. For the record, my name is John Fallon. I'm an attorney here in Fairfield, and I'm pleased to be representing the applicant with regard to this proposal. There are two applications before you tonight. One is an amendment to your zone map, and the other is for special permit and site plan approval with regard to a proposal for the development of a residential community known as Old Post Village to be located at 480 Old Post Road.
So just sorry to interrupt you, but I called the first item. You want to do these together?
Yeah, I think we should just do a combined hearing.
Okay, very good. So then this will be combined 4 and 5 on the agenda, 766 and 780 Old Post Road, special permit application of Old Post Village LLC for an 8-unit residential development as well.
Thank you. The property that is the focus of the development is at 780 Old Post Road. It's a rear lot that has been landlocked since 1966 and comprises well over an acre. The property is set back over 300 feet from the Old Post Road, and as I think you will determine when you do your own site walk and inspection, it's not visible from the Old Post Road due to already existing large homes, trees, etc. that front the subject property. Now, because the property is landlocked, its only option for development was the purchasing of a portion of the adjoining property at 766 Old Post Road for purposes of creating a private access drive. And that is reflected in the site plan that you have. The applicant before you is the Old Post Village LLC. It's a limited liability company, and its managing member is Michael Chanella, who's here tonight, along with his sons, who are also involved in the venture. Michael is a longtime Fairfield resident and principal of a local and highly respected family development company with its roots in the town. He's resided in Fairfield for many decades, continues to do so, and not to steal his thunder, but I think if this application is approved, he'd like to reside in one of these townhouses. Many decades of experience fall on Michael with regard to creating very aesthetically pleasing and high-quality developments throughout the area. And one thing that I think his track record dictates is what he promises he delivers, both in terms of quality and aesthetics. Now, Old Post Village, as I said, is going to consist of 8 luxury townhouses of approximately 3,000 square feet of living area, each with its own full-size 2-car garage. The townhouses, as designed by Jack Franzen, who you'll hear from in a minute, will offer residents comfort, convenience, and low-maintenance living in a private neighborhood setting. The demand for this type of what I will refer to as empty nester housing in Fairfield is extreme. I only have to point out to the development that you approved maybe a year and a half or 2 years ago down in Southport, down the street from the Peacock Library. I think that was 16 units? 16 units. And they sold out to local residents primarily, I might add, within 1 year. So I think that speaks to the underlying need for this type of housing in our continued efforts to keep empty nesters a vibrant contributing both economically and socially and et cetera, members of this community. We need this type of housing in Fairfield. As I said, the commitment from day one from Mike and his partners was something of exquisite quality and design. Therefore, it's no surprise that they engaged the firm of Jack Franzen and Jack personally to design the proposal that's before you tonight. And they are designed and will be built with the latest technology and techniques featuring smart home features as well as energy and cost efficient features. There was also a commitment under Mike and Jack's leadership to eco-friendly living, green building and development, if you would. So you'll note on the site plan we have the bicycle racks. You'll note that we're using extensively porous pavement in the construction of the driveway that will ensure that this permeable surface allows the rain to be absorbed and recycled. In that regard, I would call your attention to the code enforcement minutes of July 3, 2018, and the comments of Laura Pooley of the town engineering department. And she basically says drainage is designed, meets the department's requirements for stormwater retention, groundwater recharge, and water quality improvements. Use of porous pavement in the driveway area is to be commended, as an actual volume storm is retained on site rather than to be shed off-site and into flood-prone areas. We also propose a total of 21 parking spaces with regard to use for our residents and their guests. Let me talk to you a little bit about density, if I might. Section 10.6.5 has the allowable dwelling unit density in the design residence district, and it's based upon what the underlying zone is. Based upon a total lot area of 1.41 acres and applying the formula of section 10.6.5, the density that is computed is 9.73 units, rounded down to 9 units. Although the regulations would allow the applicant to build a total of 9 units on the site, which could be accommodated in 3 separate buildings, it was determined after numerous meetings with neighbors and considerations that in order to ensure that the proposed development would harmonize with the character of the surrounding neighborhood and have a positive impact on the surrounding property values, that the site was better suited for the proposed development of 8 luxury townhomes in 2 buildings as designed by Mr. Franzen.
That, you mean, if the zone change
If the
application?
zone change, yes. I'm talking about the site plan now. And I'm saying that under the design residence district, section 10.6.5, if you compute the maximum density based upon the lot acreage, you could achieve 9 units here. But we determined in order to make an aesthetically more pleasing development to only do 8.
But just to be clear, it's not that those regulations do not apply to this land at this time.
Until you change the zone.
Right, okay. Very good.
But since we're combining the hearings,
Yes,
I'm kind of
fair enough.
back and forth.
I just didn't want there to be any confusion. The way you were making it sound was that those calculations were as of right on the parcel.
No,
As
it would
of
require
today.
the zone change.
Right.
Now, let's talk a little bit about the location of the parcel itself. And this relates importantly to, I think, both the zone change and the special permit. This property is located in a transitional area between the single-family neighborhood of the Old Post Road and immediately adjacent to arguably the most intense commercial shopping center in the community, the Brick Walk. It is a classic transitional piece of property. The location of Old Post Village, with its convenience to the center business district, will make these new homes particularly appealing to town residents, be they younger professionals desiring convenient access to the train station and downtown amenities, or older residents seeking to remain in Fairfield while they downsize, who will appreciate the ambiance and convenience of the location. From a standpoint, as I'll elaborate on, of good planning, utilization of this transitional area as a transition from the single-family residential neighborhood of the Old Post Road to the intense commercial development of the Brick Walk by way of these 8 luxury townhouses is good planning. It will also strengthen and benefit the vibrancy of our downtown business district, as residents will be able to take advantage of the walkability of this location to our numerous and diverse downtown shops and restaurants. All of that relates to, as I said, the benefits of the site plan, but also the zone change. When you look at a change of zone of property, you look to the town plan of conservation and development, and you look to see whether or not the proposed zone change is consistent with the goals and aspirations of the town plan of conservation and development. Your plan of conservation and development, adopted November 15th, 2016, in discussing the characteristics of the center area, makes the following comments. The center has approximately 1,000 residences within 3/4 radius and includes diverse types of housing, from single-family residences to condominiums and of varying intensities, from 1 to 13 units per acre. In reviewing policies for this area in the 2016 POCD, the plan recommends, this is section 2.3.10, quote, creation of transitional zone for multi-family housing to stem the spread of business use into residential zones. That's exactly what we're talking about here. We're talking about creating, through the zone change, a transitional area for multi-family housing to stem the spread of business use, to provide a buffer, if you will, from the commercial development of the Brick Walk and the single-family development located on the Old Post Road.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Yes.
How would rezoning this provide that buffer you're talking about? What is the fear that there would be commercial development on the subject lot?
Well, right now it's a vacant lot, and at some point in time, there's likelihood that it'll be subject to some form of development or attempts at development, be that commercial or more intense residential development. My point is that by dealing with this now under your existing design residence district, you're able to create in perpetuity a use buffer, because the property will then be spoken for as a matter of use.
Well, I mean, the use buffer right now is as a residential, in a residential zone, and frankly, as a residential parcel, as it is currently zoned, it's not capable of being developed in that fashion.
Well, that's a whole nother reason that you have to look at some ability to modify it. And
Don't have to.
well, that you should.
Why?
Well, do you want me to finish my presentation, and then I can address that? I mean,
Okay.
because I think...
Well,
I
it
think
goes
that's-
to the buffer and the nature and the sort of the reason for the zone change, which I think is a really critical aspect
Right.
of the.
I think you have over an acre of property that sits immediately adjacent on a landlocked basis currently without the benefit of the partial utilization of 766. That is immediately adjacent to this commercial area. I'm sorry. Apologize. Yes, I'm sorry.
I
And-
usually catch that. I didn't this time. He was being loud enough in my direction. Yeah.
And I think that when you look at this piece of property, landlocked it is now, this provides a perfect opportunity to impose a transitional use that's consistent with a good planning and also consistent with the town plan of conservation and development.
Could it be, though, developed simply as a single-family residence?
Yeah, and it
Given
could-
given
and
the
it could be
flag?
also-
Please.
Yeah, really. I mean, the answer is certainly, it's a possibility it could, but it could also be developed, because they don't have to tell this commission, for other residential purposes that would be more intense than this. And that's a whole nother consideration that I don't want to anchor this application in, because this application should stand on its own merits. With respect to the articulated planning goals for housing in the plan of conservation and development, Section 3 has a number that I think are important, that we should be committed to creating additional housing opportunities for people of all ages, creeds, incomes, etc. Second, diversification of housing accommodations for the many individual desires of our population. Utilization of the design residence district, and this is section 3.3.3 at page 73 of your plan of conservation and development. Utilization of design residence district as a transition from commercial uses to single-family residential districts. So you're right, that gets to the heart of the application, and that's what you need to consider. But we're at an early stage in the proceeding, and I'm sure we'll have a good chance to talk about that. But there is an underpinning of planning logic to establishing 8 luxury townhomes on this property that, yes, that does provide a pretty good transition from the commercial to the single-family residential.
See, I see that transition, though, being more along an edge of a street. They don't want, I think what was intended was that the transitions don't happen like wrapping around the corner from the library and continuing down, I'm forgetting my street names, Old Post Road. Or, you know, I live up off Algonquin. I don't want to see stores along Old Stratfield Road or Brooklawn and then turning up Algonquin. We want to keep them on the commercial edge, which is Post Road.
Right.
So I don't see that as a risk, but,
Well, I can only, at this point, Commissioner,
or a threat.
utilization of the design residence district as a transition from commercial use to single-family residential use, I think that's pertinent and appropriate with regard to this application. I think that's kind of what we're doing.
Attorney Fallon?
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
Finish your thought.
No, go ahead, go ahead. I'm not clear.
Aside from this plot, are there any other areas, at least on this map,
Yes.
that are vacant?
Very good question. And the answer to that is we studied that, and the answer is no.
So
You
this
would, in this zone, you would have to have a minimum, of 1 acre. And there are no other properties, and we've looked at that carefully, that would provide that opportunity.
Just
So-
like, do you know what this 18, you don't have it in front of you, 180/1, this one right here,
The zone change.
what this is? This guy right here?
Is that part of the brick walk?
Is it? Okay. Thank you.
That's commercially zoned part of
You want a copy?
I know.
To leave up there?
Brick walk.
So you were asking about 180/8?
I was curious about 180/15A, but,
15A, right.
and that's part of the brick walk, I've been
Yes.
told.
Yes,
But
it is.
I ultimately though, this is the one zone that remains, this is the one parcel that remains vacant or
Correct.
unutilized.
Correct, and there's no other parcels that would meet the criteria for the design residence district where the underlying zone is A.
So if we approve the zone change, it would apply to only this one parcel.
We're only asking for it to be applicable to this parcel, and to answer Commissioner Noonan's question, which I think I did, there are no other parcels that would be eligible based upon their size for a similar zone change request.
Well, I mean, my point is, towards the transition, if it's, the point of my question was, if you're saying you have to protect against a transition, you only have this one lot that's really underdeveloped, is there much of a threat?
Well, it's 1.4 acres, so I think there is. I mean, a lot can happen on 1.4 acres. Our presentation tonight, first of all, I'm going to call on Jack Franzen to give you an overview of the site layout and architectural design. Should you have any questions with regard to the site engineering, which, as you know from the code minutes, has been reviewed by the engineering department, Mike Bertula of the Huntington Company is here. He'd be happy to answer those. Once Jack has walked you through the site layout and the architectural design, I'm going to ask Bill Kenny to give you an overview of our landscaping plan. We worked very hard on the landscaping plan. And then once we finish that, I'm going to ask Mike Galante to summarize his traffic report and findings, which are part of the record at this point. So at this point, I call on...
So are you finished with your arguments then as to the zone change?
No, I'll have some summary comments, but I thought at this point I'd give you an overview of the project.
Okay.
Mr. Frank.
Good evening. I'm going to have Dave Wojtowicz, one of the architects in my office, put up some drawings for you to look at.
Yeah. Mr. Franson, thanks very much. I think people are finding it a little difficult to hear. If maybe you could just pull the microphone up a little. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank
it's
you very much.
Better height there.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, David. We are proposing, good evening. I'm Jack Franson. My office is at 1241 Post Road, so I literally will be looking at this if it gets approved. So I do ponder it every day when I go home and when I come to work. We are, as John described, we're proposing 8 townhouses to be built at the property that's 766 and 780 Old Post Road. The 1.41 acre site is located just east of Morgan Street on the north side of the Post Road, and it occupies both R3 and A residential zones. This section is here. Access is proposed to be by means of a driveway running north-south. The southerly portion of the driveway is in the Old Post Road Historic District. The building site for the townhouses is in the A zone, is outside the Historic District. Where the driveway meets the Old Post Road, we're proposing a set of brick piers similar in character to the brick piers that you see on the Burr Homestead, and also there are brick piers on the Colonial House directly across the street. The existing picket fence that runs in front of the Sterling property, it runs along the Old Post Road on the north side, will be interrupted by the new driveway right here. And as a result, the fence will be shortened and a new corner post will be installed to define the edge of the Sterling property at 766 Old Post Road. So that's that little recurrent section of the fence. Granite curbing matching the existing Old Post Road curbing will form the radius of the road to the property line of the driveway. And behind that, steel edging will define either side of the driveway. The existing bluestone sidewalk, which currently traverses this right-of-way, will be depressed for accessibility for wheelchairs and what have you, and will continue across the driveway, which also shows up here in the site plan in the aerial view. The driveway itself will be pervious asphalt, and that's part of the whole engineering scheme. The bulk of the property lies between the brick walk and the single-family residences on the north side of the Old Post Road and Morgan Street. Our site plan positions 2 4-unit groupings, and David will pull that up for you.
Thanks.
2 4-unit groupings. And they're grouped around a landscaped circle. In observance of parking requirements, we are providing 2 parking spaces per unit by means of an enclosed garage integral to the unit, and also an additional 5 spaces on the south side of the circle. There's a total of 21, and the requirement for parking for this proposed development is 20 spaces. We also provide the necessary bike racks. And I should mention that garbage collection, there won't be any outdoor garbage collection. It'll be arranged from inside the dwellings. The entire perimeter of the property is proposed to be landscaped with 20-foot tall evergreen plantings, which Bill will describe. Building 1, consisting of 4 units, is oriented to the south, with the rear of the units facing north towards where my office is, towards the brick walk and the Post Road. Building 2, consisting of the remaining 4 units, is oriented west, with the rear facing east towards the rear parking lot of the brick walk and a portion of the Berg property. In the northeast corner, there's a small open space right here, and there'll be a small gazebo there. Each of the proposed buildings is 120 feet by 41 feet and consists of 3 stories, and they are 39.5 feet high. Our proposed combined floor area is 29,192 square feet, with the ground floor area of 10,487 square feet. Our proposed townhouse plans are similar for all 8 units, with a 2-car garage. On the lower level, there's an entry hall and a family room. On the first floor, which is really a floor above grade, there's a living room, dining, kitchen, and small office. There's also a powder room and a small, mentioned a small office or study. On the third level is the master suite and 2 smaller bedrooms with a shared bath. All 3 levels are served by a stair hall and an optional elevator. The end units are somewhat different in that they will have windows on their respective end elevations, and those on building number 2 will each have end balconies. Building number 1 only has a balcony on the east side. The exterior of the proposed buildings will be constructed, as John had described, with low-maintenance materials. The windows and doors will be clad exterior, wood on the inside. There's some stone veneer on the garage facades and the vertical elements where some of the entries are. Hardy plank or similar cementitious siding, and galvalume or sheet metal, copper sheet metal roofing in some areas, and other areas will be the 325-pound architectural grade shingles. The trim and cornice work will be AZEK or similar cellular PVC trim. The gutters and leaders will be copper. As you can see from the photometric plan in the packet, the lighting on the property is only being proposed on the buildings themselves and at entrances and by the garages. Our lighting photometric shows that the lights will be full cutoff and that there will be no light trespass onto the adjoining residential property or the brick walk. The proposed townhouses are neither in the Old Post Road Historic District nor the Center Design Business Zone. However, due to the position and shape of the property, they will be more visible from the Design Business Zone and largely not visible from the Old Post Road. Therefore, the design of the exterior, what we did is we took into account the, I think, fairly rigorous architectural and community appearance standards that exist in the design commercial zone, where there are actually, as John had said, quite a few dwellings already. And there are numerous examples of apartments and some nice ones. The traditional detailing of the townhouses, such as the corbelled gables, the siding, the balustraded balconies, the portico elements, and fenestration, do make reference to some late 19th century styling, as well as a number of homes in the adjacent historic district. Specifically, I could point out number 85 Old Post Road, number 157 Old Post Road, and 175, 931, 690, and 996 Old Post Road. So, as John said, the overarching concept here is to provide a small, traditionally styled residential townhouse enclave that's consistent with the design residence zone that is being proposed. And the creation of the design residence property is in harmony with the POCD, which John brought to your attention, and it creates a transitional zone for multifamily housing to stem the spread of business uses into residential neighborhoods, and implements the utilization of the design residence zone as a transition from commercial uses to single-family use. I'm going to turn it back to John and then Bill Kenny, and I'd be happy to answer questions.
Thanks. There is one question which I think you would be suited to answer. So is there a historic district that is either adjacent to or overlapping with this parcel?
The historic district line comes right through, I believe it comes right through here.
Mm-hmm.
That's the boundary. That's actually the R3A zone boundary.
Yeah.
And it continues, you know, along the road, but it doesn't go back further than, it goes to the south.
Right. So it goes to the Old Post Road and Penfield, et cetera.
Yes, so if we get approved, we'll have to go to the historic district to get the portion of the road where the curb cut is being made, the driveway, and the brick piers, because the historic district has jurisdiction over, you know, paving,
Yeah.
lighting,
But only,
landscaping, what have you.
but only so much of the parcel that would be in the historic zone. Because a portion of the parcel is in the zone, it doesn't then take on
The jurisdiction doesn't then
Doesn't
extend
extend.
into the other portion.
Gotcha.
That's correct.
Very good. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have
Back
any
to
other
John.
questions for Mr. Franson? No? Okay, thank you.
We engaged Bill Kenny early on in the proceedings. Obviously, the attention and detail to the design, we wanted to match by way of attention to the detail of the landscaping plan. And Bill will review that with you now.
They are, but it's close to the road,
Good evening, I'm Bill Kenny, principal of William Kenny Associates with an office here in Fairfield. I am a registered landscape architect and a professional wetland scientist and soil scientist. We were retained to help with preparing a planting plan for this project. It has two primary components to it. One is a perimeter screen around the property. You can see it is a continuous screen, evergreen screen of significant trees. Starting at the old post road and heading northwest into the property, you have the evergreens on both sides of the proposed drive. And then once you're into the property, across the front and abutting the back of 766 Old Post Road, another screen, and then it just carries around the back and adjacent to the brick walk. And lastly, along the homes that are on West Morgan Avenue, the one thing to note is that the evergreen screen does bump into the property, which helps to screen the view up the drive to the units beyond. So that's a first major component. And then secondly, there's going to be an abundance of planting around the units themselves, in front of the units, in the circle, the traffic turnaround area. So we're going to have ground cover, shrubs, trees, mostly native plants in that planting. And that's really it. So if you have any questions, I'd be pleased to.
Does anyone have any questions?
Covered one.
Thank you.
Mr. Galante, on our behalf, has submitted a traffic report. He's going to summarize his methodology and findings and conclusions for you. Mr. Galante.
Good evening, Mike Galante, principal of Frederick Clark Associates, also located here in Fairfield. I'm just going to take a few minutes to summarize the traffic report. The graphics behind me, behind my right shoulder, are in the report itself. There's nothing that you don't have in the document. The purpose of a traffic study for any development is what is the impact of this development on the roads? And that's what this traffic study looks into and provides the commission for its consideration. We, of course, did field investigations, investigated the roads, the traffic control. Obviously, all the streets nearby are stop sign control. Old Post Road is 40 feet wide, has on-street parking, 2-hour limits. Some sections have no parking. Penfield is about, I think, 30 feet or 24 feet wide. And West Morgan is about the same, about 24 feet wide. For reference purposes, the site is located here. Located here. This is Old Post Road itself, Penfield Road, West Morgan, Old Post Road towards the library in the center of town itself. We conducted traffic counts. and I'm not going to go through all the boards, but I'm just going to give you highlights and summaries. We conducted traffic counts at these intersections, Penfield at Old Post Road, West Morgan at Old Post Road, obviously along the site frontage itself. Generally speaking, the peaks in the morning were found to be 8 to 9 a.m. in the morning, typical commuter peak hour, and 4:30 to 5:30 in the afternoon. Volume-wise on Old Post Road carries about 700 vehicles during the morning peak hour and about 1,000 vehicles during the afternoon peak. Everyone that lives in town knows that Old Post Road is a busy road. It's kind of a bypass for the Post Road, and that's pretty much how it functions. You look at the directional volume on Old Post Road during the morning, it's about evenly split. In the afternoon, it's more in the eastbound direction, going towards Black Rock, if you will, as far as volume itself. Penfield Road has a much lower volume, about 150 vehicles, two-way, both morning and afternoon. And West Morgan Avenue has about 2 to 5 vehicles during the same peak hour, so a much lower volume. Obviously, a dead-end road serves, I believe, 7 single-family homes. Just to give you an idea of reference of different volumes and different roads, Old Post Road is certainly functioning as more of a arterial type of road serving the town itself, and in many ways a bypass to Post Road. Development of this, thank you. Don't go too far. A development of this type will generate about 4 to 6 vehicles during peak hours. Four vehicles in the morning, that's a two-way volume in and out, and 6 vehicles in the afternoon. That's based on standards we use from the Trip Generation Handbook. A new book came out in 2017 in December. And if you look at West Morgan Avenue, that generates 2 and 5 vehicles during the morning and afternoon peak hours. So it gives you an idea of volume. A single-family detached home will generate a different type of vehicle trip versus a townhouse. Not much of a difference, but it gives you an idea that the volumes are fairly close. So this development, let's say it's evenly split on Old Post Road, will generate about 4 to 6 trips, or 2 to 3 trips, depending on the direction on Old Post Road itself. We did an analysis, before I do that, we looked at accidents, Fairfield Police Department data for 3 years, and there was 1 reported accident on Old Post Road at the West Morgan Avenue intersection, which was a rear-end collision. That was likely due to, you see the volume on Old Post Road, certainly at 5 o'clock at night, it's stop and go for certain sections of Old Post Road. Likely that's the reason for the rear-end collision. That's the 1 accident. No reported accidents at the Penfield Road intersection, and no accidents along the site frontage itself. We've analyzed the before and after condition. I have a chart I won't show you, but it's in the report. Adding 4 to 6 vehicles to a road that has 700 to 1,000 vehicles will not change how it operates. And quite frankly, the measurements of delay and levels of service virtually stay the same. So I will not say there's no impact. There's certainly a minimal impact, if any, or measurable impact on the roads itself. Our recommendations from the study and evaluations, and I'll show you, this is graphic 2, by the way.
Excuse me, Mr. Galante? While you're still on accidents, did you look at Old Post Road where it turns, that intersection?
Here?
Yeah.
No, we did not. That is an all-way stop control intersection, but no, it wasn't included in our analysis. We can always find out, but no, I don't have it
Okay.
for you tonight.
Thank you.
Based on the studies and the evaluations that we went through, and this is a graphic that's in the report that shows you the sidewalk locations, the on-street parking regulations, and so on. And we recommend that, actually, it's a different board, but actually, we're recommending to remove parking in this section of road from West Morgan along the site frontage up to the Penfield Road intersection. So you have 2 offset T intersections on Old Post Road. Our driveway is somewhat midway between the two side streets. We're recommending removing parking on our side of the street, if you will. Let's call it the north side.
Yeah. So
Okay.
let's stop there for a moment.
Yes.
Talk about that for a minute. So, do you have any issues then with the proposed driveway here is not opposite Penfield?
No, I was getting to that, but
You
that's
getting
okay.
to that?
Yeah, fair question.
Where is the parking that you're proposing now to eliminate?
Essentially right here.
And in part, the reason why I asked you about the opposite thing is because in part you're recommending that because those streets are not immediately adjacent to each other. It's not an intersection, right?
Our driveway?
Yes.
It's not at an existing intersection, if I can
Right.
answer it that way for a moment.
I-
Yeah.
I mean, if you moved the driveway, or it not moved, hypothetically, if the driveway was immediately across from
Penfield Road.
Road,
Yeah.
okay? Would that impact your recommendation about removing parking?
I would likely say I would remove parking to the east of a relocated driveway, so east of the Penfield Road intersection on the northerly, it's really the northerly, or let's call it the northerly side of Old Post Road. I would just shift it. And the reason for the recommendation to take parking off for that section is simply to maintain sightlines.
Okay?
That's the
Sightlines
reason.
for the driveway, so it doesn't have anything to do with what I'm calling the intersection. I understand you're
Penfield?
resisting that because it's a driveway.
Yeah.
But ultimately, that area of the road, you're just doing that for sightlines.
Yes.
So how many parking spaces would be eliminated under your recommendation?
Sorry, I don't know the number, but it's probably around 6 spaces at most.
6?
Approximately, yeah.
Mr. Galante, do you have the code enforcement minutes,
I was getting to that also.
the police issue?
Yes, they
Okay.
recommended at the code enforcement meeting that would be a no left turn out of the driveway.
Correct.
And if that's what this commission feels is appropriate, then we can certainly agree to that. But we did not recommend that for 2 reasons, really. One, our volume of traffic out of our driveway is very, very low. It's really 1 or 2 vehicles turning left in or out of our driveway during the peak hours. And second, I just lost my train of thought, but second, there's really no need to eliminate that left turn movement because of that volume. And second, the reason is, the way I look at it as a traffic consultant, is the left turns into the site and the left turn into Penfield Road do not conflict with each other. They're not crossing each other because of where the Ts are set up. And for that reason, we did not recommend a restriction of the left turn movement out of the site. You're impacting 1 to 2 vehicles during peak hours by that restriction, if you were to restrict it. And we would agree to that if that's the feeling of this commission.
All right, thank you.
I'll leave it at that, but that's a summary of the report that, we looked at accidents, of course, site access considerations at the driveway, traffic volumes on Old Post Road and the side street and the intersections itself. This development will generate 4 to 6 trips. We're pretty confident that's the number. If you look at the West Morgan actual traffic counts, I've actually never seen a car come out of there, but when we counted it, we had 2 to 5 vehicles in total, inbound, outbound, total traffic. It's a very lightly used side street, if you will, with a development that's not the same, but a large single-family homes. So the estimate of 4 to 6 trips for the townhouses, I think, is a reasonable estimate. And that's what we based the numbers on, and the analysis itself. And just one last thing, we always look at comparisons of traffic increase. In this case, it's less than 0.5% when you take the 4 to 6 trips against the 700 to 1,000 vehicles.
Yeah.
And that's just something that we typically do here in town.
Yep. And
And
I
I can
appreciate
certainly
it.
answer any more questions.
Thank you.
One question.
I have one. Commissioner Meyer? You're on.
During your traffic study, did you notice parked cars on either side of the Old Post Road?
Near the site itself?
Yes.
Sporadically. I've been there I've been by there many times. The section that we're talking about removing parking is not a heavily used section of Old Post Road for parking. As you go down towards the Burr Mansion and down towards St. Paul's Church, you'll see more on-street parking.
Thank you.
Mr. Galante, what is the distance
Oh, I'm sorry.
from the proposed driveway to the Burr Mansion, if you know?
To the Burr Mansion, which is here?
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to scale it off. Offhand, I don't know. It's several hundred feet at least. Yeah.
Did you look at the on-site flow? There was a question about fire truck access and turnaround.
No, my chore here was really from the driveway out onto the local streets and local
Okay.
roads.
Maybe somebody else.
So
can answer.
the team could certainly answer the question,
Okay.
but it won't be me.
The fire marshal review.
Use a mic, please.
We did have the fire marshal obviously review the site plan, and I think that's been made part of your record. Please come.
What's been made part of the record is the fire asking for a turning radius for fire equipment to be provided.
Right, and I think that's been confirmed confirmed. Mr. Wendt and I will look at that, but I see he's going, I think there was a subsequent memo from the
Okay.
fire marshal.
I didn't see that in the file here, but okay, we'll look for
Who
it.
treated
He said that we thought that one had been provided by the fire department to confirm the turning radius, but we're looking for it. I didn't see it.
Mr. Petula, would you just come forward? He says that the fire radius confirmation was added to the detail sheet. Can you just identify the
sheet?
sheet you're referring to?
Members of the commission, my name is Michael Boturla. I'm a licensed land surveyor, licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut, a member of the Huntington Company. In the code review meeting, fire marshal asked us, and we added the turning radius onto our detail sheet. I don't know which number it is on your sheet, on your set, but the detail sheet is, let's see, approximately 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth sheet.
So I see that.
And he's reviewed that. We sat down with him after the code review meeting, and he's reviewed these plans that are before you.
So was that applied? I mean, sorry. I'm looking at sheet 1 of 1 where you have the radius that is
45 feet.
for
Yep.
a truck.
Yes, that's adequate. As a matter of fact, 45 feet is the radius of a turnaround that's required by the subdivision regulations here in town.
Right.
And it's adequate for the single unit truck that's required by the fire marshal.
Well, I see that the radius in the circle is
5.
45.
Yep.
So a truck can just kind of pull in, turn around, and pull out.
He just makes a full circle without
circle.
back and forth motions. That's correct.
And we did, John Fallon, for the record, we did meet with the fire marshal to review that drawing before we submitted it to him.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Not for me. Anyone else have any questions for Mr. Galante? No? Thank you very much. Thank you.
So let me address a few summary comments, subject to my opportunity to have an ultimate summary and perhaps rebuttal. And let me start with the zone change, because that's where we left off with the chair. We all know that the law ascribes to you your greatest discretion when you're making a determination as to whether or not to change your zones, to amend your zone map. That's recognized. And that falls under the rubrics of you being a planning and zoning commission. You have the ultimate determination, as Mr. Wendt will tell you during your ultimate work session, of looking at whether time, experience, future planning considerations warrant and make advisable in your planning function the granting of the map amendment that is before you. In doing that, one of the things that you will look at is your plan of conservation and development. You know, it's funny because I said a few minutes ago that one of the policies and recommendations of the 2016 POCD is creation of a transitional zone for multifamily housing to stem the spread of business uses into residential neighborhoods. And you remember the question was, well, what's that about? If you look back at your records, less than a decade ago, on an adjacent piece of property, you granted a zone change of a portion of that residentially zoned piece of property to commercial to afford an opportunity for the brick walk to have additional parking. So there is some precedent for looking at these buffered or these adjacent pieces and saying, well, we can extend the zone. So I think in this particular instance, that is a relevant factor. But I do come back, and I probably will again, to the goal and policy that says that you should utilize the design residence district as a transitional tool from commercial areas to single-family residential areas. It's easy to say, oh, this is a landlocked 1-acre piece. But we already have a precedent where an adjacent piece, the commercial zone line was extended. And we also know that there are opportunities for development of this piece beyond the capacity of our own regulations to contemplate. So I leave it to you at this sort of middle juncture of these proceedings to carefully and seriously consider the concept that this zone change, which, by the way, will provide, quote, housing opportunities and diversification of housing accommodations for the many individual desires of our population, is worthy of your very serious consideration. I think it's also important, as we look at both the zone change and the site plan, that this applicant, Michael Shinella, who lives in Fairfield all of his life, he determined at the outset that they would utilize provisions of the existing Fairfield zoning regulations, not seek any variances or modification to these regulations with regard to this proposal. And indeed, the density that they propose, as I said earlier, is 1 unit less than what technically is allowed under the zone. Everything we present to you, should you see fit to change the zone, conforms in all respects to the provisions of the Design Residence District. Consistent with the purposes and intent of this zone, our proposal for residential use of the property will harmonize with and benefit immediately abutting residential properties by providing that buffer I speak of, while at the same time providing that transitional area to the adjacent commercial zone. This will be a uniquely beautiful residential community, located to provide convenient and desirable living in a beautiful neighborhood setting to residents seeking a convenient location to the downtown amenities offered by our Center Design Business District. It's going to ensure the sensitive and productive utilization of this parcel that has been landlocked for over 50 years. And it will provide that transition at a very attractive level from the single-family residence at the Old Post Road and the abutting commercial brick walk. It's going to provide opportunities for current Fairfield residents to snap up a housing option, as they did in Southport, which is currently very desirable. We believe strongly that what we present to you tonight is a very superior and sensitive vision for the ultimate utilization of this property, as compared to more intensive options which would have little or no regard for the zoning regulations, the area, or the community at large. So we hope that you will weigh all of this. We'll look forward to addressing any comments or questions that you or the members of the public have. And at this point, we thank you for your attention.
Okay, thanks. So I do have a question. Does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Fallon? Okay. So, Mr. Fallon.
Yes, sir.
So, what we see here on this map with the driveway is not how the land records exist today, right? I mean,
You mean what is proposed?
Yeah, but that's proposed. So what exists today is 2 lots without this driveway on it, right?
Correct. The zone map shows the proposed development. So yes, the answer is correct.
Right. So, and you know, we have a submission. I'm unclear about how we have created this additional extension on the parcel in order to provide this driveway to the back lot without a subdivision.
I don't think a subdivision is required. We're not increasing the number of lots. I know Mr. Proto, who will speak,
Yeah.
is going to address that.
Well, he's got his arguments.
And I have my rebuttal on that argument, but in courtesy to him, I'd rather let him make his argument first. But my position,
So call it what you will.
it's a lot line revision and not a subdivision. That is our position. And clearly, I think correctly so, because we're not creating an additional building lot.
So you feel that you're entitled to simply revise the lot lines.
Provided we create no nonconformities in your regulations, correct?
So so typically, in nonconformity in the regulation, typically, if this was a parcel under our existing regulations, in order for it to be subdivided to provide the driveway with this access to a back lot like this, that back lot would require about 200 feet of frontage on a main road, the Old Post Road.
But that's not what we're doing. A subdivision would be applicable here if we were creating another lot. We're not. What we're doing is simply adjusting the lot lines of the existing lot. And that's a lot line revision and not a subdivision.
Well, you just said that, but you're creating the means of access for a second lot on which residences will be built. In order to do that, under our existing regulations, you would have to have frontage of a substantial amount of feet onto the old post road.
And we
So-
create the frontage we need by way of a lot line revision, not a subdivision.
How much frontage do you think you need?
50 feet. Whatever we have there, I think it's 50 feet.
50 feet?
Is it 50? 50 feet.
I'm trying to understand the parameters of your argument. You didn't address this in your comments.
Because I think it's, with all respect, I think it's fairly self-evident. We are not engaged in a subdivision here. We are engaged in a lot line revision.
Okay.
That's something you can discuss with staff,
No,
but...
no, listen, you can
And
choose to
Mr.
address it now.
Proto is going to address his comments.
I'm not arguing with
And I'll
Mr.
address
Proto.
mine
I'm not
after that.
asking Mr. Proto. My concern is that we, and I was part of the process, specifically revised our regulations to avoid and prohibit lots that would be flag lots, back lots, lots which have an access road or driveway, a driveway that is configured in the manner that you are proposing in this plan. And I'm confused as to why you think why the applicant believes that it has the right to simply adjust the lot lines to create a configuration which otherwise would violate our subdivision regulations.
Because we're not seeking a subdivision.
But how else would you describe it?
We're seeking a lot line revision, which...
To create a non-conforming configuration?
No, actually, we're rendering the lot conforming by providing it access.
Okay. Well, I'm confused, because I don't understand how it would be conforming under our regulations. Putting aside the request for a zone change to allow for the multifamily construction, right? I mean, because the first step in this is whether or not we have a lot line revision, which actually is allowable under our rules, right?
Correct.
If we can't do that, then, I mean, there's no point in proceeding further, right?
Right.
So, if the revision to the lot lines ultimately results in a configuration that is not in conformity with our existing regulations, how does that work?
I don't believe it does.
How?
It doesn't violate any provisions of your zoning regulations. It provides the frontage that is required for this particular application. Happy to look at the section you're referring to and maybe comment on that later, but that's certainly where we find ourselves.
I'm extrapolating because I don't seem to feel like I'm getting, a clear answer. But so you're thinking that the frontage on the old post road that's required is 50 feet and that you've got it on the driveway?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
Yep. Commissioner Meyer.
Attorney Fallon.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner.
That's
Yes.
okay. Is there any walkway access to the rear of this property to the commercial district?
I don't believe so. The answer is no. That's not to say at some point in time we might not be able to establish that, but we have not discussed that with the Brickwalk property owner.
Okay. Anyone else?
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay. Anyone, member of the public wish to be heard? Sure. All right. Well, we're now going to turn, I apologize, I didn't explain this to some of you who may not be familiar with our process. We're now turning to the public hearing, the public comment portion of the public hearing. The applicant is finished with his presentation, and now it's open for public comment, and one by one, people will be recognized to come forward, take the podium, and state your name, and the mic is yours. I ask that you keep your comments germane. We have no time limit for anyone. If you're represented by a lawyer or like a village association representative, I would ask that you allow that representative to, speak your case, and that we don't have sort of, cumulative or repetitive arguments. We get what you're saying. We hear you loud and clear. You can submit comments in writing if you'd like. Email them straight away to the email address that's on the TPZ website. They get distributed to all of us, and it is a written record in the file for this application. So, with that being said, we have an attorney here who's representing some adjoining, abutting neighbors who will hear first, and then we'll go in line. There's another represented group of people here, and then one by one, we keep going. We have a curfew of 11 p.m., and if we are not finished by then, well, once we finish with public comment, then Mr. Fallon gets to have his rebuttal, which he's, and then we will adjourn. So, if we don't finish by 11, it gets kicked over, it stays open and gets kicked over to our next regularly scheduled date, and we'll see if we can get there. All right?
You have petitions. I have the originals. Who should I give the originals?
Clerk, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Benjamin Proto. I'm an attorney in Stratford. I represent two abutting property owners, Joseph and William Pesci of 88 West Morgan Avenue, and Todd Bolt and Melinda Boa of 102 West Morgan Avenue. This is my first time before this commission. I thank you for your time, and I learned a long time ago brevity gets you invited back, so we're going to try to keep it brief. And Mr. Chairman, I'll take a lead from you. You were just involved with a conversation with Attorney Fallon regarding subdivision, and I had submitted a letter to the commission in September indicating that it was my opinion that the driveway was a subdivision. If you'd like to discuss that at the front end of this, we can do that and go from there, because you seem to have some interest in this.
Have you assessed the proposed revision
I have.
in consideration of our revised subdivision regulations that
I
require
have,
frontage?
and together with state statute. And if you have, I believe you have the package that I sent in regards to the subdivision request of September 24th. In addition, you have an exhibit package, which I provided this evening. And if you turn to exhibit number 4 of that package, that's a Section 8-18 of the Connecticut General Statutes, which defines what a subdivision is. And while Mr. Fallon had partially stated what a subdivision is, a subdivision doesn't have to be a building lot. A subdivision can be a parcel that's not a building lot that allows for the development or building of another building lot. Now, in 1966, Mr. Curran, John R. Curran at the time, acquired what was known as 766 Old Post Road. And again, if you look over at the package that you had from September 24 to Exhibit B, you'll see the original 766 Old Post Road, which was a single lot comprised of what is presently 766 Old Post Road and what is presently 780 Old Post Road. It was one lot. That lot existed for many, many years. Subsequent to acquiring the lot in 1966, Mr. Curran divided the lot. He got his so-called free cut that we all talk about. And if you look at Exhibit C, you'll see the map that was recorded, map number, I believe it's 4460, with the town clerk's office, which shows that cut. That was his free cut. As you know, under state statute 8-18, if you make more than one cut that creates 3 or more parcels or lots, which allow for building or the development of another building lot, that becomes a subdivision. So in my opinion, the driveway that they're cutting out of 766 is the second cut of 766 after your subdivision regulations were adopted in 1948, thereby falling under the provisions of 8-18, making it a subdivision.
Because they're transferring it to 780.
Correct. No, they're not. That's the thing about it. If you look at, in the September 24th package, E1 and E2, there's a number of pieces of litigation that have been commenced regarding an agreement that exists. And what it indicates is that the Sterlings are transferring this driveway portion on the Sterling lot to an entity known as Old Post Village LLC. Mr. Curran is transferring the Curran lot, 780 Old Post Road,
The back
to an
lot.
entity known to MTS Enterprises. Now, MTS Enterprises is the parent of OPV, or Old Post Village. But according to their own complaints, their alleged facts, and also if you look at the package you have today, number 5, that's Mr. Curran's lawsuit where he indicates who's getting what property. These properties are transferring to different entities. That's their allegations. That's what they're saying is happening in their litigation.
So let me just understand your point here. I'm supposed to draw a line right here. Across there?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So basically, so this is between the parcels 182-602A and 182-602 across the driveway. It's basically the existing lot line.
The existing lot line.
Okay. And it's your argument, based upon the pleadings filed by the other parties, they're not even your clients, right? The plaintiffs in the other cases?
The plaintiffs are not my clients.
Right.
My clients are defendants
Right.
in those
So
cases.
The plaintiffs in the other cases are alleging that the back lot would be owned by one party, the driveway up to the point where I just identified would be owned by a second party, and the front lot, which would now be a little bit smaller, would be owned by a third party.
Correct.
And that's why your argument is that this constitutes a subdivision.
That's
And
one of my arguments. The other argument is based on state statute. The fact that it's now the second cut creating what is a third parcel. It's not a building lot.
Right.
It's almost a quarter of an acre in total size, 50 by 301 feet. It's well over 15,000 square feet. It's a quarter of an acre that is created for the purposes of the development and building of the back lot.
Well,
Therefore, under my opinion, and I think my opinion is shared by Judge Radcliffe, who in 500 North Avenue LLC versus the Town of Stratford Planning Commission, which you have a copy out at F1 in your September 24th package, when two properties owned by the same entity attempted to do a lot line adjustment for the purpose of an affordable housing project, he said that lot line adjustment was a subdivision, and it was between the same entities.
And
This-
that was under 830G, correct?
Well, not...
For the affordable housing?
Well, the Planning Commission had to make a determination as to whether or not it was a subdivision.
Right.
They determined it was a subdivision. The applicant, prior to the 830G application, went to court to overturn that.
Yeah, you're going too deep into my question, because the underlying application was to propose an 830G affordable housing
Yes,
complex.
that was the underlying application, which would have gone to the zone, because in Stratford, it's a split Planning and Zoning Commission. So, in my opinion, based on state statute, before we even get to your regulations, based on the case law that exists in both F1, F2, and F3 of your September 24th package, this is a subdivision. And before you can do anything else, you've got to determine if it is a subdivision. We need a subdivision application, we need all the subdivision plans, we need all the subdivision engineering, we need everything that you would normally have for a subdivision to make a determination as to whether or not it meets your regulations and you want to approve a subdivision. If you don't approve it as a subdivision, we're all done.
So I got there a little bit sooner and asked whether you had analyzed it under the subdivision regulations, and have you done that?
I have not looked at your subdivision. I've looked at state statute to determine whether or not, by state law, it's a subdivision, which obviously would supersede your regulations.
That would trigger a review.
And in my opinion, under state statute, it is a subdivision as defined by 8-18. kind of leaving that unless there's any more questions on that.
Anybody else have any more questions on this issue? Commissioner McAleese.
So reading what am I looking at? Tab 4 of, I guess, the stuff you gave us tonight.
Yes.
The highlighted section where it says, subdivision means the division of a tract or parcel into 3 or more parts or lots made subsequent to the adoption of subdivision regulations by the commission. Do you know when our?
1948.
1948, and this was done in 1966, so it's subsequent. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on this topic? Thank you, please proceed.
In addition, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, you have 3 petitions that were given to you this evening. And petitions 1 and 2 are in your package. They are petitions that are submitted pursuant to Section 8-3, subsection B of the Connecticut General Statutes as a protest petition, both for 766 Old Post Road and 780 Old Post Road, signed by an excess of 20% of the property owners within 500 feet of the property. Therefore, pursuant to 8-3, subsection B, a supermajority of the commission would be required to approve any zone change. Getting to the zone change, and following up on Mr. Fallon's comments regarding the zone change, Mr. Fallon seems to think that this is a transitional piece of property that would transition from the brick walk into the Old Post Road historic area. In my opinion, a transition is something that allows you to move between various areas, various zones, various neighborhoods. That's not what happens here. Understand what's going to happen here. They're going to build 2 buildings, 4 units in each building. There's no way to transition between the current lot, the 780 lot, to the brick walk because there's going to be fences, there's going to be trees. You're going to have to leave the property, go out, drive around, drive back around. That's not a transition. A transition is a smooth movement between the zones. And this is purely my opinion as to what a transition is. In addition, if you look at your master plan of development, your master plan of development calls for an expansion of the Old Post Road Historic District, not a tightening of it. This does not meet that plan. So in regards to the zone change, right now you have on the current lot, the 780 is a Zone A, which would allow for a single-family residential house to be built, which is what is in the entire neighborhood. The 766 lot, the Sterling lot, is a split zone between A and RS3, and the RS3 area is where we pick up the Old Post Road Historic District. So I don't see this as a transitional zone. I don't see this as anything other than a single-family residential unit, which is what you have now in your current zones. And Mr. Fallon did a very good job of dancing around what he was really trying to tell you as to what a quote-unquote more intensive use would be. We do understand he means an affordable housing project under 8-30G on a 1.2 acre piece of property that's landlocked. That's what he was referring to as a more intensive use. Today, there exists an agreement between all of the neighbors, including the Sterlings at 766 Old Post Road, which they all agree to, including my clients and some other clients, or some other neighbors, in which they agreed that they would not cooperate in any way to allow for a zone change or a variance on the Kern lot. What does that mean? That means today, Mr. Kern can come to the building department, come to the zoning office with a plan to build a single-family house with a driveway from the Kerns, probably would need subdivision approval, and build a house. Just like all of the other single-family houses that are there. That's what can be done today. That is in harmony with this neighborhood. That is in harmony with the zones that are there. There's no need to change this zone, and you shouldn't change the zone. This is a residential neighborhood, a single-family residential neighborhood. It's not a transitional lot. 1.2 acres is not transitional. So the zone change should be denied for any number of reasons. First and foremost, we go back to you got to get to your subdivision. But as we go along, and we look at a number of things that are out there, again, if we look at your special, and I'm going to transition unless there's some questions on the zone change, and I'm happy to answer it anytime you have them. If we transition over to the special permit, and we look at your regulations, your regulations do require a number of things. For instance, Section 25, which deals with your special permits for design districts, and Section 27, which are special exceptions which apply. You're aware that 27.4.1 and 25.7.7 require that the development plan shall be of such character as to be harmonious with the neighborhood, to protect property values of the neighborhood, and to enhance the appearance and beauty of the neighborhood and not impair the surrounding properties. Now, Mr. Fallon has indicated, and we've all seen the pictures, and I don't think anyone's going to deny it's a beautiful design. And they're going to use the finest materials to build this. Problem is, it doesn't quite fit into the historic nature of the Old Post Road. This is a very modern development in an area that is more historic in nature. It doesn't fit, it's not harmonious, and it doesn't fit the character. And both your plan of conservation development and your master plan, which both Section 25 and 27 require to be part of the consideration for the special permit and special exception, call for the Old Post Road to be maintained as an historic district. In fact, Section 4, subsection 1.2.1 of the master plan states that the characteristics of the town center is the historic residential area along the Old Post Road. And Section 5.2 of Section 4 states that the historic district, as I said before, should be expanded, enlarged, not contracted. And if we haven't already done so, Mr. Chairman, I'd ask that both the master plan and the plan of conservation and development be made part of the record for this proceeding. It's our opinion that the proposal does not maintain the characteristics of the historic nature of the Old Post Road, nor does it enlarge the district. If anything, it reduces it and makes it smaller. We've already heard they're going to have to go to the Historic District Commission just for this, the driveway. And it doesn't enhance the neighborhood. Part 2, Section 3.10 of the Plan of Conservation and Development also talks about the expansion of the Old Post Road area. So you've got it both in your master plan and your Plan of Conservation and Development. In short, we believe that the plan falls far short of meeting the provisions of Section 25 and Section 27. In addition, Section 27.4.3 of your regulations require that there shall be provisions to be made for entering and exiting the property without creating undue hazard to traffic or congestion. We're going to submit that the proposed driveway does in fact create a traffic hazard with existing conditions, and as such, that alone should warrant denial. What's interesting is the gentleman who spoke about traffic didn't talk about one specific thing, and that's the YMCA. And the YMCA's exit is almost directly across the street from the driveway. Now, I don't live here, I don't use the Fairfield YMCA, but from what I understand, school buses are regularly bringing children to and from the YMCA for before and after school programs. It's a heavily used facility. There's an entrance and an exit. This exit is almost directly across from the proposed driveway, causing an issue, but was not talked about. In addition, when we saw this, we thought it would be best to provide you a counter-argument to the traffic situation, and so we've retained our own traffic engineer, a gentleman by the name of David Spears of DLS Traffic Engineering. And Mr. Spears is with us this evening, and I'm going to ask that he come forward to address our traffic review. His resume is in your exhibit packet at number 6, and he will also be referring to a graph which is in your exhibit number 7. So at this time, Mr. Spears. And this again is in exhibit number 7 of your package.
Thank you.
This traffic report is also part of the original.
For the record, my name is David Spear. I'm principal engineer with DLS Traffic Engineering. My office is in Windsor, Connecticut. I'm a registered professional engineer in the state of Connecticut, and we were asked to look at the traffic issues of this application. Our study included a number of things. We did a a site visit to measure existing geometry and review sight lines. We looked at the existing documents that were available relative to this application. The documents are listed in my report. We looked at the Frederick P. Clark Associates Traffic Access and Impact Study. We looked at the proposed site plans, the site line plan. We looked at the Fairfield subdivision regulations, the zoning regulations, and also the CONDOT Highway Design Manual. Just briefly to go through my report, it's actually a very brief report. Under existing conditions and the site visit, we looked at Old Post Road. The speed limit posted there is 25 miles an hour. The road is actually 40 feet wide with separated by a double yellow center line with parking allowed on both sides of the road, limited near some of the corners. When you get east of Penfield Road or Penfield Street, Old Post Road narrows to 32 feet in width, and you have approximately 16-foot wide lanes. As was mentioned, there's a YMCA just west of West Morgan Avenue. West Morgan Avenue intersects the Post Road from the north. Under stop sign control, it's about 26 feet wide. Penfield Road intersects the Old Post Road from the south, and it's actually 31 feet wide. The site plans and plans that were submitted show it as 25 feet, but in the field it measures 31 feet. It's about 16 feet on either side of the double yellow center line, and there's a stop bar just on the south side of Old Post Road. We noted that there were, and you can see it on my exhibit, there are fences looking to the left from the proposed driveway. There's a 4-foot high fence that's about 20 feet off the curb line. And on the south side of the road on Penfield, there's a brick wall that's about 6 feet tall, and that's about 13 feet off the curb line. And on the other side of the road, there's about a 3-foot high white picket fence.
Right.
And
So if I may, so that your comments with respect to the sight lines at Penfield Road are pre-existing conditions that are not being proposed to be changed in any way by the applicant, correct?
that's true. On the north side of the road, the fence is 20 feet off the curb line, which is outside of the site triangle.
Right, okay. All right. So with respect to the sight lines on the proposed driveway, did you find that they were adequate, and as Mr. Galante did, or not adequate? The proposed driveway?
The proposed driveway sightlines are adequate for the measured speeds out there, which were, I believe, up to 31 miles per hour. But and I detailed that in my report under the sightline discussion. When you're looking from Penfield Road, which is a pre-existing condition, you have to pull forward a little bit to get in front of that brick wall to see to the right. Other than that, the sight line is okay. I mean, the Old Post Road is a straight shot, and you can see in both directions. But the real problem with the proposed site drive is the interlocking lefts. The applicant mentioned the left turns coming off Old Post Road into Penfield Road and into the site drive as being separate, which is true. However, the left turns out of Penfield Road and out of the site drive are overlapping, which is called interlocking lefts. So what happens is when vehicles are trying to turn left out of the side streets, they're looking for a simultaneous gap in both directions to be able to turn left. So when you're looking from Penfield Road to turn left, you're looking at Old Post Road for a space to turn into. The same thing that would happen for somebody turning left out of the proposed driveway. So they'll be looking for a gap in both directions to turn left into. So both of those drivers will typically find the same gap to turn into, And when they turn, their vehicle paths cross each other. And what happens is you're looking at Old Post Road, you're not looking at the offset and opposite roadway, so you don't see the other vehicle that's going to turn left into the same gap that you turn into, which is a very hazardous design and something that's not recommended. And as was mentioned earlier, I believe by the chairman, if you had the proposed driveway aligned with Penfield, that condition goes away, and that's totally dependent on where they put their frontage and their proposed subdivision or not subdivision, whatever it is.
Proposed driveway, yeah.
Mr. Spear?
Yes.
Is the interlocking left, is that an industry turn? That's an actual...
Yes,
okay.
that's a...
Then is there a minimum distance where it no longer applies, like a minimum separation distance?
Well, these particular, the separation between the proposed driveway and Penfield is 70 feet, center line to center line. You would like to space them about 100 feet apart so that the movements are completed before you get past the other roadway.
Thank you.
So the way they are now, both those movements will be made simultaneously.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah, thank you.
And does that 100-foot separation exist in some sort of rule or recommendation in the ITE manual, or like some standards of roadway configuration, or is that your opinion?
It's in the ITE handbook that the intersections should be spaced 100 feet minimum apart.
And do you know, like, a citation to that section? I didn't see that in...
I don't have it in my report, but I could get that for you. It's in...
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
Okay.
You can submit that, Mr. Chairman, prior to the next hearing.
Okay. Yeah. Commissioner Corcoran?
You use the word intersections to describe this, but one of them is a driveway, right? Does that qualify as an intersection?
Well, the actual term is interlocking lefts. It's not really referring to the intersection so much as the paths of the vehicles and the fact that the left turn movements overlap. So the left turn movements are interlocking.
Picking up on that, though, you started to allude, I think before I interrupt you, to aligning with Penfield Road that might be more beneficial. Does that go to Commissioner Corcoran's question then about, is that an intersection? If you have a driveway across the road, does that count as an intersection in a traffic study, or is there, and then do other rules apply for site distances, or?
Well, the way that, this is actually a town road, so it would go by town standards here, but the way the DOT looks at it, they require that driveways provide the intersection site distance that's required at an intersection. And I'm not sure if the town has any other regulation that supersedes the DOT regulations, but that's the way they would look at it as, if the DOT were looking at this on Route 1, they would much prefer to see them lined up.
Thank you.
As far as the second part of my report, the review of the Federal P. Clark report, in general, we concur with the volumes and the trip generation and the distribution. It is a small generator and it's not a capacity issue, but we disagree with the conclusions and the comments they have on safety. This intersection that they're proposing is not in existence at this point, so their accident history that discusses Old Post Road in the vicinity of this site does not include this intersection, and the fact that there was one accident reported during the study period doesn't indicate future accidents and future safety issues. So we disagree with that. The other thing that we looked at was the design vehicles that could access this site, and I think that was discussed briefly with regard to emergency vehicles and the 45-foot radius, which they do have, and we did look at the turning movements, and an SU-30 can actually make the cul-de-sac turn around in 45 feet.
Good.
However, right turns into the site drive and out of the site drive will require you to cross the center line of Old Post Road and use the full width of the driveway, or you're going to have to jump the curb, and I believe there's going to be a brick post and fencing there in the corner, so whether or not you clear that, I don't know, but
You mean like a fire truck that is coming down Old Post Road, south, west, making a right turn into... Yeah. They'll have to bow out a little, cross the center and yellow line and sort of go into make a wide turn?
SU-30 is more of the critical vehicle, because the SU-30 is supposed to stay on their side of the road, and if there were a vehicle trying to exit at the same time, say a UPS or FedEx or somebody was coming in, they'd have to back up to make room for the vehicle to come in. An emergency vehicle, a fire truck with their lights on and sirens and whatever, can use both sides of the road and could get in and out. However, the issue with the emergency vehicles is, though, once you get a large vehicle into that driveway, say there's a fire in one of these buildings, once that vehicle is in and sets up, then it's very difficult to nearly impossible for staging for any other emergency vehicles to get in or out, because there's only one access, and you cannot get in. You know, once they get in and put their outriggers out and set up the vehicle, you can't get around it.
There was, if I could just interrupt you there was another situation that I recalled where the length of the driveway dictated some further on-site movement capacity. Does that exist here? The length of the driveway be, I think I heard 300 some feet. Is that, no? Not an issue? Okay.
Yeah, we didn't look at the driveway length. I do know in a number of towns the length is 800 feet, which is dependent on the length of the hose for the water truck, so that if they're restricted to the main street, they can still reach the building.
Very good.
So anyway, in conclusion, we have 5 comments relative to this site, and they're primarily safety related. The first is that the offset and opposite alignment of the driveway to the access provides a safety issue for the general traveling public. If you have that accident in the middle of Old Post Road, that can create additional problems for people on Old Post Road in addition to the side street traffic. The proposed site access drive, again, has the interlocking left alignment. The accident history, as indicated in the traffic study, does not reflect the proposed unsafe geometry, and therefore it's not indicative of future accidents. The SU-30 design vehicle does not have adequate access, so that because the frontage is limited to 50 feet and the radii need to be completed before you get to the extended property line of the frontage, that leaves you a very limited area when you have a I believe it's 24-foot wide driveway, and then the radii, you don't have enough space to provide adequate radii. And the single access is a safety concern for any emergency vehicles.
Question.
Yep, Commissioner Noonan.
Earlier, the chairman noted the code enforcement minutes, which I believe the police had said, Mr. Chairman, correct me if I'm wrong, they would recommend right exits and right entrances.
Right turn only.
Right turn only and
On the exit.
On the
exit only. Would right turn exit or even right turn entrance only alleviate safety concerns in your view?
That would, if you prohibit the left turn out, that would eliminate the interlocking left issue. However, as far as the geometry and the width of the driveway and the emergency vehicle access, it wouldn't affect that.
Well, they're going to get in however they need to, so yeah.
Well, yeah, but no left would, and I guess that's probably why the police suggested that in terms of the Penfield Road across the street.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, one of the issues that I didn't touch on early on, we kind of got into our favorite subdivision topic, but as we talked about the existence of the pending litigation that exists, and that litigation, and as the Commission is aware, I had sent a letter to the Commission back in August, I believe it was, regarding that. If that litigation turns out the way we believe it's going to turn out, that the agreement is upheld, the Sterlings won't be able to do what it is they're asking you to do. And any approval that you may give would become nullified because they couldn't do it. So our opinion is at this point that this application is not ripe for your consideration until it's determined as to whether or not what they're planning to do they can actually do. And I understand that that's an issue for the courts to decide, and whether the Commission chooses to move forward with a decision, be it an approval or a denial. Obviously, if the courts render a decision which nullifies your decision on an appeal or from the pending litigation. But it is, I think, something the Commission should at least be aware of, that there's a very good possibility that the litigation that is currently pending could nullify any decision of this Commission.
We appreciate you raising that. So the applicant is entitled to file an application. We're bound under our regulations and to hear and pass on the application in the ordinary course. If there is litigation pending, which you think might have an impact on that, to such a degree that what we do here might be superseded or somehow impacted by that, then you need to make a motion for with the court to issue an order which says,
Understood.
Suspend this until that is final, or whatever. So
it is also, I would argue, Mr. Chairman, something that the Commission can take into consideration in rendering its decision, and that's all I'm asking, is that it be something that the Commission be aware of.
I see 3 lawsuits, right?
There's 3 lawsuits, a cross-claim, I believe there'll be some
I
counterclaims.
don't want to talk about cross-claims. I see three separate
Yes.
proceedings, right?
Correct.
Can you, in like 5 sentences, just provide an overview of what is at issue in those? Because to me, I don't understand why Old Post Village is suing the Sterlings, right?
Because the Sterlings are a signatory to the agreement.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe you could just take
we'll try to do this very briefly. There's
an overview of what those.
The primary issue in all of the 3 pieces of litigation is the validity of the agreement. There's some other.
What is the agreement again?
The agreement is between a number of neighbors: the Sterlings, the Pesci's, the Balboas, previous owners of the Haddad properties, the Brown. The agreement goes to its successors, and the various Brickwalk entities, all of which abut in some way, shape, or form the 780 Old Post Road, what is referred to throughout the litigation as the current lot.
Is the agreement one of these exhibits?
No, the agreement's not. The agreement is not in any of. And if the Commission would like a copy of the agreement, be happy to provide a copy.
Well, I mean, to the extent that you're asking us to take into account the nature of the lawsuits that have been filed,
well, I think
it only makes sense. But
the
I'm not
primary
going to tell you
purpose
what to file.
The primary purpose of filing of giving you the lawsuits was to show you the different entities which are acquiring property. I'll be happy to file a copy of the agreement along with Mr. Spear's reference to the guide.
Yep.
But take out the tortious interference claim and the antitrust claims, the primary issue is whether or not the agreement is valid.
But again, I'm sorry, I think what was the agreement?
What does it say?
The agreement says that the parties, the Sterlings, the Haddads as successors to the Browns, the Pesci's, Balboa, and the various Brickwalk entities would not agree and cooperate with
any application that required a zone change and/or a variance for any development of the current lot. So under the agreement, putting the subdivision issue aside for a moment, a single-family house could be built back there and the Sterlings could provide access. They would not be prohibited under the agreement from doing that. Under the agreement, the Sterlings would be prohibited from providing access to the current lot for
Something
8
else.
townhouses.
Something else.
Something else that's not currently allowed by the zoning regulations.
Who owns 780 now?
I'm sorry?
Who owns 780 now?
John E. Kern, trustee of a Kern trust.
Okay.
And
And
Mr.
is he a
Chairman?
signature of the agreement?
No, he is not.
Okay, so it's a matter of that, not easement, the access to 780 then?
Yeah.
For purposes of something other than what is allowed by the zoning regulations.
Commissioner Levy.
Just, in your opinion, would the contract prohibit an 830G application, which might not require a zone change?
If the zone change isn't required and a variance isn't required, that would be arguable as to whether or not that would be allowed.
Well, so to that end, if they were not allowed to make this lot line adjustment, then that back lot would not have access, which would inhibit the progression of an 830G application.
Wow.
If Sterling is not willing to provide the access, then I'm not sure how you get people back to the housing.
That's my point.
Right.
Right.
So the Sterlings would have to agree to an 8-30G affordable housing project in their backyard.
And if they did, that might not violate the existing contract.
It might not.
Well, we don't know.
they
We
also
don't
have a
we don't have it in
necessary-
front
I'm
of
just
us.
asking
Yeah,
your
we don't
opinion.
have it in front of us.
It's also a
Commissioner-
necessary
Commissioner-
easement probably as well.
Commissioner Corcoran.
Well, interestingly enough, when Mr. Kern, 1966, and if you look at the deed that is attached to the package from September 24th at, I believe it's Exhibit D, and they're out of order, D and C are reversed. If you go about 3/4 of the way down next to the double stamp, he actually agrees never to seek an easement by necessity or a right-of-way over the property. Yeah, we all thought that was interesting, too. He specifically agreed he would never seek that.
Okay, well, arguments for another day, I suppose. Commissioner Corcoran.
So, I'm curious, if the subdivision issue comes up that this access, the flag lot cannot be created, how would this lot be usable for a residence?
That would be, it wouldn't be. It would.
So it's not usable for anything?
It would just be vacant land.
Well, could the...
Well, it would be vacant land if the commission were to say that it's that it would deny the subdivision for the purpose of building a single-family house, then it would be vacant land. And other access would have to be found in some way, shape, or form.
But well, we can talk about this in executive session, okay? Because we're getting ahead of ourselves in terms of the hypothetical uses of property that might or might not gain access through different means. You know, and there's apparently an agreement among neighbors and adjoiners that will limit their ability to, you know, grant, you know, access and all the rest of it. So I don't.
Anything else, or just wanted to close up if there was nothing else, Mr. Chairman?
Any other questions? No.
So then just again, obviously, our opinion is this is a subdivision, and this commission needs to make that determination that it's a subdivision and require the appropriate subdivision application and filings that would normally come along with a subdivision. And as such, if the commission does determine it's a subdivision, obviously, although you could, I think theoretically, approve a zone change if you wanted to with 5 votes, you could not approve a special permit until such time as the subdivision were approved. In addition, sections 25 and 27 require a denial of the special permit application as it doesn't enhance the neighborhood, it doesn't maintain the character of the neighborhood, it reduces rather than it impacts the historic district, and most notably, and I think as Mr. Spear had discussed, the proposal creates hazardous situations on both Old Post Road and also for emergency vehicles entering and exiting the property. Now, while a fire truck could enter the property, I would just give you the scenario of a fire truck entering the property, setting up its outriggers, ambulance enters the property, another truck enters the property. How do we get the ambulance out of the property with injured or ill people? So the proposal, while beautiful in design, does not fit this neighborhood. There's no need to change this zone, a single-family residential zone, and as such, we would request a denial of both the zone change and the special permit. If there's any other questions, Mr. Chairman, I'm more than happy to answer them if I can.
We do not have any further questions. Thank
I
you very much.
apologize that I violated my brevity rule.
Thank you. Do you need it? Do you need a break?
Just give
Yeah,
them
just
those,
hand
we'll
them.
pass them down.
We'll take one and pass it
Thank
along.
you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Madam Chair Lady, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the Commission. My name is Barry Knott. I'm a lawyer with the firm of Knott & Dunn with offices on Main Street in Stratford. I'm here this evening on behalf of Mr. David Cardos, who lives at 7 Meadowbrook Road in Newtown, Connecticut. He sits in the maroon shirt in the second row. I want to make reference to a folder of exhibits which I have just passed out, the first three of which are photographs of the houses that Mr. Cardos owns. Exhibit 1 is his house at 48 West Morgan Avenue, immediately abutting this property. Exhibit 2 is a photo of a house owned by him at 38 West Morgan Avenue, immediately abutting this property. Exhibit 3 is a photo of the lot owned by him on the corner of Old Post Road and West Morgan Avenue, where the old Uncle Hotel used to be. That is also owned by my client. Exhibit 4 is a copy of the town GIS map, which shows the property which is the subject of this application outlined in blue, and where I have highlighted the 3 properties owned by my client in yellow, so that you can get a perspective of his proximity. Exhibit 5 is an aerial photo showing exactly the same thing. I outlined 766 Old Post Road and 780 Old Post Road in blue, and my client's 3 properties are outlined in red. Now, as you can see from these 5 exhibits, my client is an abutting property owner, which is the subject of this application, and therefore is an aggrieved party who will be drastically affected should this application be approved as currently presented. Now, let me start off my opposition to these applications with a point of order. And this is a very significant point of order. The petitioner's application for zone change from Residence A/R3 to Design Residence District is defective on its face. And because of this defect, the Planning and Zoning Commission does not have jurisdiction to hear the application for zone change this evening. I make reference to Exhibits 6 and 7. Exhibits 6 and 7 are the 2 applications for zone change, one signed by John Curran, trustee, and one signed by the Sterlings. The Sterlings as to 766 Old Post Road and Curran's as to 780 Old Post Road. Now, attached to these applications is a legal description of the property, Schedule A, which is the second page. And I've highlighted in yellow some language which I want to read. The property which is the subject of this application commences at a point on the northerly street line of Old Post Road, said point being the common corner of land now or formerly of Paul M. Berg and Gay Gasser and 766 Old Post Road, thence southwesterly a distance of 201.20 feet to the true point and place of beginning, whatever that means, thence southwest the same direction, a distance of 50 feet. On the second page, if you look at the end of the legal description, it makes reference to the parcel being 71,327 square feet or 1.64 acres. Now, that same legal description is attached to Exhibit 7, which is the Sterling's application for zone change. Now, the Gasser property that's made reference in that legal description, where this legal description starts, is on the easterly side of the Sterling's property. The far other, so this legal description runs all the way across the front of the Sterling's property, 200 feet to the driveway, which is another 50 feet. So it starts off at Gasser's property, runs all the way up to Post Road, all the way across the front of Sterling's property, and then it goes down into the back. This is a defective legal description. Now, you cannot have a zone change application submitted with a defective legal description and published in the newspaper with a defective legal description, because by doing so, you are depriving the public of exactly what property are we talking about here. Exhibit 8, by the way, is a copy of the notice that the commission published in the newspaper. And I've highlighted in yellow at the bottom, commencing at a point on the northerly street line of Old Post Road, said point being the common corner of land now or formerly of Berg and Gasser and 766 Old Post Road. Exhibit 9 is a copy of the town GIS map upon which I have outlined in green the legal description that I just read to you. And you can see that there's a little red X at the corner of the Gasser property where it abuts the Sterling's property, and that's where this legal description starts. So it starts over at Gasser, it runs all the way across the front of the Sterling's property, across the 50-foot right-of-way, then down the back and around the flag in the rear. The problem is, if you go back and look at Exhibits 6 and 7 again, on the first page of Exhibits 6 and 7, the property is being described as 1.41 acres. If you look at the last page of the legal description, the property is being described as 1.64 acres. Obviously, this inconsistency on the face of the applications render them invalid and deprives this commission of jurisdiction to act on this application. Now, the difference between 1.64 acres and 1.41 acres may not sound significant to some people, but it happens to be 10,018 square feet of land. And I can't tell from looking at these documents whether that 10,000 square feet of land is included in this zone change or not included. Because in one place they talk about 1.41 acres, another place they talk about 1.64 acres, and the description itself is nonsensical. It makes no sense. And therefore, the application is defective on its face. At this time, I want to talk about Attorney Proto's claim about the subdivision approval.
Before you move on to your next subject, and we have a question, is that okay?
Yes, please.
Okay. Commissioner Corcoran.
Yeah. I don't see the problem with the description. I mean, they have a starting point for the survey, which is not on the property, and they tell you where to go from there till you get to the corner of the property. I don't see the defect.
No, that's not what the legal description says. The legal description doesn't say start at the corner of the Gasser property.
No, it doesn't.
It does say that, and then it runs all the way across the front of the Sterling property.
But it doesn't say that that's the property line. It just says that's how you get to the beginning point.
Well,
This is the same as my deed on my property.
what you're talking about is if you have a lot in the middle of a block, for instance, and they start your legal description by saying from the corner of Old Post Road and North Benson Road go 1,850 feet to the west to a point where your legal description would start.
Right.
And then you start the legal description there. But in this situation, we have a legal description that talks in terms of 71,000 square feet of 1.64 acres on one page and 1.41 acres on another
That's a
page.
different issue. That's a separate issue.
Well, I think that problem arose from the fact that the legal description is defective.
Well, so you're saying that the additional area is somehow related to this line at the front of the property?
What I'm saying is that I, as a member of the public, cannot tell from looking at this application and the publication that this commission made in the newspaper what the property is that is the subject of this application.
I'm not confused.
Okay, well,
Okay, Mr. Chairman.
Well, it's to be debated in
Yeah.
the executive session, you know.
Just
Commissioner Levy.
Yeah, being familiar with the property, in fact, wouldn't it be true that the lot line description is a description of both properties, which is the 1.64 acres, and of course, whether it's north or south there, since basically it goes north, goes northeasterly, is problematic. But basically, it's 50 feet along the Old Post Road, 200 feet along West Morgan, 50 feet in the back, and 300 back to the start. So you're describing in both applications the entire parcel, of which the subject parcel, number 180, Lot 10A, is the 1.4 acres, or the subset. Isn't that, in fact, what's described here?
except for the fact that you're not describing the easterly boundary of the Sterling property, because that dimension is missing from the legal description. If you look at my Exhibit 9, the easterly side of the Sterling property is not described in the legal description. There's a problem with the legal description, and there's a problem with the application. Anything else on that?
Any other questions on this subject?
All right, now with respect to the subdivision issue, I agree that the status of the law in Connecticut is as Attorney Proto described it in his letter to Jim Wendt of September 24th, 2018, and in his public comments tonight. Judge Ratcliffe in his 500 North Avenue versus Stratford decision, Judge Satter in his Balfe Company versus Manchester decision, and Judge Downey in his Stone Trail versus Weston decision all agreed that when a boundary line adjustment is significant in size and made for the purpose of allowing for the development of the adjacent lot, even though no new lot is created, there is a subdivision of the property, and subdivision approval is needed before development can proceed. In fact, in the Stone's Trail case, Judge Downey said, where a boundary line adjustment between two lots is minor, creates no additional lot, and is not made for the purpose of development, it does not constitute subdivision of property. However, where a boundary line adjustment is significant in size and made for the purpose of development, even where no additional land is created, it does constitute a subdivision of property if the outcome were otherwise. This would make a mockery of subdivision law. Attorney Proto has pointed out in his letter and in tonight's argument, and pointed out paragraphs 8 and 9 of the applicant's Superior Court litigation, which is attached to his September 24th letter. In those paragraphs, John E. Curran trustee contracted to sell his property to MTS Enterprises, and the Sterlings contracted to sell their property to Old Post Road Village, a completely different entity than the entity to which John Curran trustee was conveying his property. So a lot line adjustment is you convey your property to your next door neighbor and adjust your lot lines. Here you have a situation where Sterlings are selling to one entity and Curran is selling to a completely different entity. That's not a lot line adjustment. It's a subdivision. To claim otherwise is absurd, both logically and legally. Furthermore, the legislature, in its wisdom, created the subdivision statute so that local planning and zoning commissions could evaluate specific details of a proposed development in order to determine if the design made sense. Was it reasonable? did accommodate neighborhood characteristics, where the traffic engineering, draining, and other details could be modified or improved. In this case, the developer in Sterling designed a 50-foot access way so that it was all the way over to on the west side of the Sterling's property, immediately adjacent to the neighbors on West Morgan Avenue. They have 251 feet of road frontage, by the way, 251 feet in a zone that requires 100. They decided to take the 50-foot right-of-way and put it way over next to the West Morgan Avenue property. Exhibit 11 is a design that I did revising the Sterling House portion of the proposed site plan. You will note on this exhibit that I have modified the entranceway to go from the old post road to the current lot in the near 40 feet closer to the Sterling House than the plan which they proposed. This new access way is shaded in gray on this exhibit and is located 15 feet off the side of the Sterling House, conforming to the side yard setback regulation in the R3 zone. This leaves the Sterlings with far in excess of 45,000 square feet of lot area and 151 feet of road frontage. And under this scenario, Sterling's house conforms in all respects with the zoning regulations for the R3 district. However, as you can see from this exhibit, it provides an additional 40-foot strip of buffer planting, which I have highlighted in green, between the property owners on West Morgan Avenue and the proposed access way to the rear lot. If you look at Exhibit 12, this represents a revised site plan which I prepared, in which the proposed 8-unit townhouse complex is relocated farther away from the properties on West Morgan Avenue. As you can see from this plan, the two buildings are now facing each other to the rear of the Sterling property, and the 40-foot wide open space buffer would extend from the street all the way to the rear of the current property, providing the neighbors on West Morgan with significant additional buffer protection from this proposed development. Exhibit 13 is the second revision which I prepared, which shows the proposed 8-unit townhouse complex rotated clockwise so that units 5 through 8 abut the rear of the Sterling property near their shed. Once again, the 40-foot wide open space buffer would extend from the street all the way to the rear of the current property, providing the neighbors on West Morgan with significant additional buffer protection from this proposed development. Both Exhibits 12 and 13 have the added benefit of moving the proposed structures to a new location significantly distant from the houses that belong to the people on West Morgan, which are immediately adjacent. Exhibits 14 and 15 are photographs of a stand of mature trees located immediately on the boundary line between the Sterling property and the properties on West Morgan. You can see it is a thick stand of trees. It is this area in which the stand of trees is located which will have to be clear-cut in order to make way for the 50-foot right-of-way as shown on the applicant's proposed plan. Obviously, the elimination of this stand of trees will have a significantly adverse impact on the property owners on West Morgan. The applicant's proposal to create a buffer area 12 feet wide, which is what their plan shows, they got a 50-foot right-of-way going in, the driveway portion is 25 feet in the middle, which means there's 12 and a half feet on either side of the driveway, where they're going to put 20-foot high arborvitae. Thank you very much, Bill, for that. Exhibit 16 is a photograph of the area in which the proposed 50-foot right-of-way, shown on my version of the site plan, Exhibits 12 and 13, would be located. So you can see from Exhibit 16, there is an area that is currently cleared of trees, which is where my right-of-way would go into the back, thereby saving the mature stand of trees that are located immediately adjacent to my client's property.
And Exhibit 17 is a photograph of the Sterling House taken from the area where my revised 50-foot right-of-way would be located. As you can see from this exhibit, the Sterlings would still have significant frontage on Old Post Road to complement the size and character of their home. In fact, the Sterlings would have 151.2 feet of road frontage on a lot in excess of 45,000 square feet, more than 2 times that which is required in the underlying R3 zone. Now, I'm not suggesting that my 2 versions of an alternate site plan for this property are well done or are the only ones that are possible to come up with. However, I am suggesting that there are possibly ways that the petitioner can develop this townhouse complex without destroying the property values of the houses on West Morgan Avenue. It would mean that the Sterlings would have to have a slightly smaller lot than they are proposing now, but since they're getting the benefit of the bargain by selling their land to the developer, it is they who should take the hit, not the property owners on West Morgan Avenue. In any event, by taking this to subdivision, you will have an opportunity to examine the pros and cons of various different iterations of a proposed site plan. By the way, my version of the driveway in 40 feet closer to the Sterling's house makes the driveway almost across the street from Penfield, thereby benefiting. In any event, for the reasons I've articulated earlier in my presentation, the applications before you tonight are defective in a way that deprives this commission of jurisdiction. The legal descriptions are incorrect. The size of the property is incorrect. Without the zone change, you cannot hear the special permit applications. These applications should be denied with prejudice due to the errors and inconsistencies contained therein, and the applicant directed to submit to the Planning and Zoning Commission, acting in its planning capacity, an application for subdivision approval allowing for the division of the Sterling property. Thank you.
Attorney Knott?
Yep. Commissioner Noonan.
Yes.
With respect to your argument that we lack jurisdiction, I understand your argument. I mean, do you have a legal citation for that, or is it just, it's not, the legal description is wrong in the notice, notice is defective? Is there a legal cite to that, or is there, if it's a typographical error, for example, can that be remedied, or is it, as you say,
Well,
jurisdiction?
there are myriad cases that require that an application for a zone change be specific as to location and as to where the property is located and the size of the property. A 10,018 square foot differential in lot size, the difference between 1.64 acres and 1.41 acres, does not lower itself to the level of a typographical
I know you do a
error.
lot of land use, but you're basing the jurisdiction on case law, or of...
Yes, that's correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And I believe your regulations require
Well, certainly the
specificity as to...
Of course, the regulations require that the application be published and it be specific
Right.
and so forth. And I think that what Commissioner Noonan is asking about is in the cases where there is, a defect, there are there circumstances where it can be minor and, overlooked, or, your argument is it's not minor in any event. But then his ultimate question is, your basis for saying the defective notice deprives us of jurisdiction is based upon common law.
Yes, the Connecticut Supreme Court has said that the public is entitled to know the location and size of a property that is subject to a zone change application.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Is there any other member of the public that wishes to be heard on this? Yeah? Just, I know there's a lot of people here, so come on, you, first one, this guy raised his hand first, come on up.
Oh, somebody beat him.
Well, okay, you're beating him to the punch. Yeah, you might as well, I mean, if they do it in an orderly fashion, just come up and sit down in the front row and take your turns.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. I'm from a different world than you guys, and I'm amazed by what you do, and I can't believe this goes on every few weeks. I'm just so impressed. My name is Ken Kingsley. I live at 164 Sunny Home Drive in Fairfield on a single-family home on a lot that was formerly the backyard and gardens of a house located on the old Post Road near its intersection with Beach Road. My in-laws live on West Morgan Avenue, and we've been fortunate to see our children walk to visit their grandparents just a few blocks away. I know how special the neighborhood is, and I want to address some of the many reasons why this application should be denied. There's nothing wrong with the current zoning plan, and there's a lot wrong with the proposed zone change. Good zoning protects all of us here in Fairfield. We trust you, the members of the Town Plan and Zoning Commission, to protect our quality of life, our investments in our homes, historic values, and the public health and safety. Zoning should be changed only to improve the public good and protect private property values, and not when it will cause more harm than good to the public and neighbors. In the case of this application, the harm far outweighs any good. The benefits, to the extent that there are any, are only for the profits of the developers. Meanwhile, the zone change would have a negative impact on the historic value of the old Post Road, which have value not just for neighbors, but for the town of Fairfield and its citizens. The old Post Road area combines a mix of uses that have coexisted for many decades, even centuries. Historic homes and churches, civic spaces like Town Hall, the Fairfield History Museum, Burr Mansion, the YMCA, and the library all exist on relatively large lots. There is a mix of uses, but the spacing and volume of structures and land is harmonious. To allow high-density development on a single lot behind the Sterling's house will be inconsistent with the historic character of the old Post Road and adjacent single-family residences. It would increase traffic volume and create safety hazards for pedestrians on a road that is already over capacity several times a day, during morning and evening commutes, at nursery school drop-off and pick-up times, during special events at Town Hall Green and Burr Mansion. A new street opening located so close to the intersections with West Morgan Avenue, Penfield Road, Oldfield Road, and the two YMCA exit points would be unsafe, adding more crossing traffic in a location where people, including lots of children, frequently walk across the street to travel between the beach and the town center. The developer is calling the new road a driveway and not a road. Webster defines a driveway as a short road between a public road and a house or garage. This short road is over 500 feet long in total, almost twice the length of a football field before it divides into the driveways. But whatever it's called, the impact is the same. More traffic, dangerous turns, decreased pedestrian safety. In terms of immediate impact on neighbors, there could be no doubt that the impact of an 8-unit development on a lot that currently can now lawfully only can accommodate one would be substantial. In fact, it would have an 8-fold negative impact on noise levels, light levels, aesthetic values, and property values. And for what? Again, to enrich developers, all entirely at the expense of the public and nearby private property owners. Until 2007, the land at 780 Old Post Road was wooded with old growth trees that buffered residences on Old Post Road and West Morgan from the sounds and lights of the commercial uses on the Post Road. The property's owner decimated the land by cutting all the trees and stripping all the topsoil. Ironically, the developers now appear to argue that the loss of screening caused by the property owner himself provides grounds to change the zone and build 2 rows of large townhouses. But from the perspective of the neighbors, a one-family house with a front yard, backyard, and trees makes a much better buffer between the gracious homes of the Old Post Road than the architecturally inappropriate condominium development that is being considered. Maintaining the current zoning plan is also the best way to protect the public's interest in preserving the aesthetic and historic values of the Old Post Road Historic District and promoting traffic and pedestrian safety. To sum up, the existing zoning is there for good reason and should not be changed to benefit only the property developers. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you for your comments.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Walter Shaw. My wife and I reside at 487 Old Post Road. We've been there for 25 years, and I'm here in support of this proposal. I won't go through a litany of how long I've been walking on the Old Post Road, and with all due respect to
Mr. Fallon,
one of the attorneys, about the dimensions of where Penfield Road is in relation to where the driveway is totally inaccurate, but nevertheless. There's a couple things I want to say, and I hate to follow lawyers because they're so articulate and they're so on spot, but there's some common sense here that I think that we need to consider. Number one, and most importantly, these townhomes will be invisible to the Old Post Road. virtually. I know Henry disagrees with me on that, but when the landscaping grows in, they will be invisible. And I think that's important because the traffic, with all due respect to all the traffic experts, I don't think traffic is going to be an issue. Coming out of my driveway in the morning, I sometimes have issues. There's a street right across from the Sherman Parsonage house. My neighbors are all friendly. They wave me on, I wave them on. That's the nature of the Old Post Road. It's not a contentious neighborhood. People let people in. It's just the nature of the street. The other thing I wanted to mention, and some people nix this as an insignificant thing, but the property taxes on the existing land generates roughly $3,000 a year, give or take a few dollars. If these condominiums are approved and they sell for what we assume they'll sell for, this property could generate roughly $250,000 to the town of Fairfield. Now, the state of Connecticut is in a financial death spiral. We all know that. I know that's not going to fix this, but if we could replicate this and create housing in a historic area that's invisible and increase tax revenues to the town of Fairfield, I think that's something that's worth considering. It's not chump change. It's a lot of money. It's a significant amount. 4 more times this, it's $1 million in tax revenue. My third point is, I know a lot of people in Greenfield Hill would love to come down to our wonderful neighborhood and enjoy the ability to walk to the restaurants, to walk to the beach, but they don't want to maintain a big mansion. It's a lot of work. This is the 21st century. This is where we're heading. And I would venture to say that this may be a microcosm of what Connecticut needs to do to fix its financial problems. I mean, again, this is a minor little thing with a couple $100,000, but we have financial problems in this state. Maybe it's a potential fix. I don't know. And the other thing, and I know everybody doesn't like to hear this because they consider it a threat, but if these are approved, it takes off the table the proposal for affordable housing. And I know that Jim Sterling, a friend of mine, has been approached by 4 builders and has been offered twice as much money to gain access to that property. And I'll tell you what, if affordable housing is proposed here, I will be in opposition to that. But I am in full support of this. I think it's smart. I think it's logical. I think it creates tax revenue to the town of Fairfield. And I think it's in keeping with the harmony of the Old Post Road. It doesn't affect the Old Post Road because you're not going to see it. It's going to be invisible. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments.
Thanks for the introduction. Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for your time. I know it's late, so I'll be brief. I do want to submit a letter written by Jim Miller, who's an attorney who lived on the Old Post Road for over 25 years, and he had gotten called by many of the neighbors and the members of the Old Post Road Area Association, so he did write a letter on their behalf.
Yep, you can submit that right over there to the clerk. Thank you.
I'd like to speak for myself and my wife Tara, who's in the back of the room. We've been residents on the Old Post Road for 25 years and live at 388 Old Post Road. I've been part of the Old Post Road Area Association since I moved in, and I was its vice chair for 10 years. I also was a commissioner in the town of Fairfield and sat on the HDC for 10 years and served as its vice chair, so I know where you're sitting. But to me, I moved into the Old Post Road area because it was historic, it was preserved, and it was going to have managed change. I also moved in because it was R3, single-family home. I wanted greenery around me. And as a property owner, going into a zoning area, you kind of expect what your neighborhood's going to be. And if there's a reason to change the zone, it should have a really good reason or a hardship. I don't see any hardship in this zone change application. As a matter of fact, the people requesting it don't even own the land yet. I also know from the history of being there long enough that the land that is locked was actually offered to be bought by the adjacent neighbors on West Morgan many years ago. I also know there's an agreement in effect that only a single-family home would be there. And when the Sterlings had an application for a single-family home a few years ago, I was in support of it. I think that the developers are putting too dense of building on the property. We met with the developers as a neighborhood, and we made suggestions that we thought would be helpful, that maybe we could negotiate and come to the board together. I thought if they moved it back to 6 units, if they pulled it away from the West Morgan property so it's not 15 feet in their backyard, that maybe we could work with them. Since they're going to be entering into the most historic district in our town, that building should be more of a historic nature. I heard, yes, we'll do that, but nothing else. So, getting to the traffic, have you ever done a traffic study when there's a wedding at the Burr Mansion? There are cars parked on both sides of the street, right in front of where this driveway is going to be cut. It's difficult to get out of driveways now when there's an event on the Old Post Road. They've redone the Burr, it's getting rented more and more. There are fairs on the town green all the time. They just started a new outdoor theater there in the summer, so we have more and more cars parked on that. So it's more of a norm that the cars are parked on both sides, which makes the street even more narrow. Now, how could a fire truck get around that curb when there's cars parked on both sides? I don't know. I think that the setbacks should be really looked at. It's not fair to buy a home in an R3 and then years later find out that they're going to build a 3-story, 4-unit townhouse 15 feet from your property line. So I could go on, and I agree with a lot of the other comments that were made by West Morgan family's attorneys, and I really hope that you deny this application. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Yeah, good evening. I'm Johan Andreasen, 981 Old Post Road, and I request that the committee deny this proposed zoning change to the 766 and Old Post Road to Design Residence District. First, I fear for the impact of traffic that would be caused by the proposed development and the safety and well-being of my kids and kids and families in the area. There are several schools right nearby, the Montessori schools and Pulse Nursery, Sherman Elementary, the YMCA, the soccer fields at Town Hall. Immediate proximity to this development, kids are playing, running, biking to these places, being dropped off by their parents, all over this area. The area is already affected by a huge volume peak traffic that is increasing. We have overflow traffic from the permanently congested Post Road. It's a big problem, causing congestion, speeding, unfamiliar drivers on Old Post Road. And it's getting worse. Other sources of increasing traffic, obviously, is frequent events at the newly renovated Burr Mansion, increasing density of the beach area, which I believe is now the most densely populated area of Fairfield. Also, the planned extension of the Fairfield Museum and History Center that we've read about in the news, the large development, by the train station, residential development. I mean, this will all cause traffic in the area. We really don't need more cars on Old Post Road. Because this would make it even worse. I mean, this is like 8 new large units with 2-car garages, 3,000 square feet each, 21 parking lots. It's not just the residents that are going to drive their cars in and out there every morning. They can't walk to the town, right? They're going to have to drive. They're going to drive everywhere. It's also cleaners, nannies, Amazon deliveries, takeout deliveries, visitors, play dates, mailmen, decorators, landscapers, garbage. I mean, I could go on all night. We've heard many different traffic studies. I can do my own. I have a big family. I mean, there's going to be 100 cars going in and out there at least. It's bad for the safety of our kids. Noise pollution, congestion will get worse, and so forth. I think all in what is supposed to be a single-family residential area, I think enough is enough. Something needs to give. We don't need additional cars, trucks, and so forth. The current zoning is there for a reason, to prevent these developers from overexploiting small random lots in thriving neighborhoods at the expense of the residents buying into these areas on the presumption that it's residential, single-family residential. So let's use the existing zonings. Let's not allow this change. And I'm not against multifamily housing development, but to randomly allow for the construction of multifamily housing on small 1-acre lots in the middle of single-family residential neighborhoods without any further plan or purpose, to expand or to make this a district, is just bad policy and a bad idea. and it will negatively impact the property values for all of us who have bought into this area. So I think it's worth pointing out that this is not part of any plan. It's not a cluster of family residences. It's not part of any area that you can call designed for multifamily residences. It's a random landlocked lot. That's not a district. And I don't think it's anything that should ever be considered to be a designed residence district. It's just fragmentizing and destructing the neighborhood. So, you know, we really rely on the zoning board to please enforce the rules that is there. Just because some developer has got their hands on a 1 acre lot, that doesn't mean that this massive, huge condo should be built on it. Or that it should be guaranteed this design residence status. You know, I take a big issue that this developer seems to think that, you know, he, you know, somehow has the right to do this. I think it's, you know, a predatory developer, you know, and I say that with purpose in this case because, you know, as I understand, and I even heard it twice when this was presented early in the evening, that it's basically a threat that if this developer does not get his way on this zoning change, a large affordable housing is going to come in here. Well, you know, I think that's a bad argument, quite frankly, because, you know, then basically a developer can do whatever he wants, because if he doesn't get his way, hey, we're going to do affordable housing. And that has basically spooked, I think, some of the residents. So we all have concerns, but I don't think as residents we should fall victims for this extortions or threats. We need to work together and, you know, fight this case. I think because the developer clearly doesn't really care about us, I think this development to me is monstrous. I think it's going to be an eyesore. We're talking about 3.5 or 3-story apartments, 40 feet tall. There is not that many structures, even in the commercial district, at that height in Fairfield. So, you know, you can Photoshop these pictures any way you want. You know, make it look like some sort of Christmas tree garden or something. But I think the really opposed to this, and I think there's a great irony in the proposed name of this condo development, the Old Post Village. I think, you know, we heard a previous speaker talking about this is the future. Well, I think this is not the future in the historic district. If this is the future, we could level the entire, you know, historic district and just build condos all over it. I think that, you know, that would be like the burning of Fairfield again. You know, it will, you know, remain as a statement to the greed and excess and the, you know, utmost distaste of the time we're now living. You know, so I think that's the wrong decision. It's a monster. It's, you know, before we were talking about it's not going to be so bad traffic. You know, we can't compare these condominiums to, you know, the homes that are there. Well, it's 24,000 square feet, like 8 huge units of 3,000 square feet each on a small 1.2 acre lot in a fragile historic district. You know, and it just, you know, it's monstrous to me. And you're going to see it. I think there's no doubt about it. You know, from Old Post Road, you can try to build trees. It's going to take a long time, but you can't block, you know, a 4 feet building towering like two times the height of anything in the area. So, I mean, and the problem is this: if you start to allow the historic district to be basically surrounded or squeezed by a wall of these types of buildings, condos, I mean, you will allow the historic district to wither away. People will not be willing to buy in, you know, these big old houses, pay the huge money it takes to maintain them and invest in them and live there if it's going to be surrounded by this kind of properties. I mean, we're all going to sell, and nobody, I mean, you can look at many, many towns where that has happened, where there is all beautiful historic buildings, but it's in decay. It's been destroyed by exactly what we're looking at here. So I think the part of the uniqueness really, the Old Post Road Historic District, I think is at stake. What makes it unique is the size, the continuity. So do not let this project destroy what makes Fairfield unique. What is there for all to enjoy. We should not, bow to these greedy developers, who do not seem to appreciate what's historic versus what's the future. As a resident in the area, I don't really want to pay for this. I don't want to see my property value declined. Yes, that these developer can make a buck, but that's unfortunately math here. So I request that the board reject this development, reject any change to the current zoning, and the change to the design residence district be rejected based on, what I've said, the safety of our kids and of the neighbors in general. I want to send a message to stop this fear-mongering of these predatory developers trying to fragmentizing the single-family residential neighborhoods by randomly seeking out odd lots for exploitation and destruction, and also in order to preserve the beauty of the landmark that is Old Post Road for future generations to enjoy. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. I'd like to get in as many people as I can this evening. We're not going to finish. Just by show of hands,
Good
how many
evening.
more people would like to speak? Show of hands? Yeah, so we're not going to finish this evening. All right? So we have an 11 o'clock curfew. I'd like to hear from as many as I can. To the extent that we have, 10 minutes of repetition, I'm just letting you know. Please proceed. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ed Olson. I've been a resident of Fairfield most of the time since 1934. I presently live in the rural part of town at 1775 North Street. I grew up in a house built in 1739, where I experienced history firsthand and developed an appreciation of Fairfield's history and its historic architecture. I went to college in Boston, where history was carefully preserved. While traveling around the country on structural engineering business and military assignments, I was able to see many examples of wise historic preservation that reflected the evolution of our country. Fairfield's historic district, the only remaining intact historic district in coastal Fairfield and Westchester counties, is an important part of that story, and one we owe to future generations by valuing and protecting its integrity. This zoning change request not only tramples on that integrity, but negatively impacts all the nearby properties that have evolved with that integrity in mind. 780 Old Post Road is part of the historic district, and the property associated with it should be also, and should be bound by the authority of Fairfield's Historic Commission. This zoning change request should be denied, and the wisdom of the existing zoning should be respected and continued for the benefit of the entire community. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments.
I'm Curran. I'm John E. Curran, trustee. I'm the owner of the property. And I guess maybe the...
Mr. Curran?
Yes.
We have members of the public that wish to be heard.
Oh.
You're part of the applicant.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right? I apologize. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Denise Walsh, and I came tonight to speak in favor of the community that's proposed. As a real estate agent that's been involved with the Village of Southport and both with homes in the beach area, I sold many or was involved in many of the transactions on this short leg of the Old Post. I thought it was important I come and appeal to all of you because there is a huge demand in Fairfield right now from empty nesters, which is not being met. And we saw that with the approval of the Village of Southport. 7 of those homeowners came from Fairfield, and had they not found a place like the Village of Southport, they would have left Fairfield or left Connecticut, or they would have rented. In fact, the New York Times just a couple weeks ago wrote an article talking about this very problem. It's a real problem. It's been written about in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, that in Connecticut, we're seeing a lot of people, especially people once their kids have graduated from school, leaving the state because they're unable to find something that is new and maintenance-free. And I don't think this is a David and Goliath situation where the developer is predatory. I know the builder personally for 20 years, very respected. And so I don't see there's anything inherent in what they're proposing that would destroy the nature of the Old Post Road. One, you're not going to see it from the street. Two, instead of looking for the wants of the few, instead of looking for the wants of the many, which is this huge population of people who are professionals and work in Fairfield, have paid taxes for 10, 20, 30 years, and they have nowhere to go that is maintenance-free and new and walkable. What Attorney Fallon said about kind of a buffer is having a single-family home that backs up to commercial, instead having something like this that is minimal. There's few homes, they're not gigantic or ugly, and we're not having a family with 5 teenagers and 7 cars. I mean, you could have one house built there with 3 teenagers and a family, and you'll probably have more traffic problems than having 8 empty nester families. Out of the 16 homes that were sold in Village of Southport, 15 were empty nesters. 7 of those sold homes in Greenfield Hill. They paid tax and have lived there. 3 of them are professionals who work in Fairfield and would not be able to stay here if we weren't able to provide them housing. This is a perfect opportunity for us to move Fairfield forward in a very cautious and reasonable and in a small unit complex. So I just would appeal to all of you to consider what the benefits of this would be. This is not about making money. No one's life is going to be changed with the money they're going to make on this. The opportunity for Fairfield is to step forward and provide housing for people who have lived here and paid taxes for years and don't have something like this to go to. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Julianne Sterling, and I live at 766 Old Post Road. I did not intend to speak tonight, but I've heard so many things that are inaccurate or things about myself
Sorry,
that I'm...
Mr. Fallon, is she part of the applicant?
She is the owner or one of the owners of the property, and I have no problem if you want to, I think the owners should have an opportunity to speak, but if you want to do that after public comment, I'll make them part of my rebuttal.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Your comments will be folded into the owners.
I'll speak later. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a number of people here who've been lining up. So we'll try and get to you. We have 6 minutes to go here. Come on.
You're okay.
Come on.
You're
Come,
okay.
please come up. Sir. No. Let this gentleman speak. Come on.
My name is Troy Fancher, and I'm not an out-of-town lawyer from Stratford schooling this committee on what is legal and not legal. I have lived in Fairfield for 20 years, first on Harbor Road, now I live on Bronson, 502 Bronson Road. I am an empty nester. Bronson Road looks like a used car lot now because everybody is selling because they want to move into something else, something they can afford or something that makes sense. I'm one of those people. What I would charge, because I think it was in 2004 or something like that, Fairfield was rated as one of the top cities in this country to live in. Since then, I realize there's problems with the state. I realize there's a lot of problems. But speaking for myself, I want to stay in Fairfield, but I don't have options. This offers me options. In fact, I know a person that's seen this design that wants to buy one of the condos, should it go through. So my charge to you is, as the lady before me said, there's a demand out there. This committee should be thinking of how to attract people to Fairfield, how to change its image, and offer options to people like me. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Joe Thiel. I live on 76 Penfield Road. This is very, very brief. In the concept that one picture is worth 1,000 words, I have a picture I took of the corner of Penfield Road and Old Post Road just yesterday morning at 9:40. And this is without any cars parked on the street. The traffic was backed up from Congregational Church beyond Penfield Road. I'd like to submit this as just for you folks to look at and see if even if one more curb cut with 20 cars parked in a parking lot that are trying to go to work in the morning at the same time as all of these cars are going to make no impact upon the traffic effect. So I would invite you all to please ignore Mr. Fallon's fear-mongering. The option is not necessarily to grant this project the rights to a change of the zoning as a better idea than allowing it to someone who's going to build something worse. The better and best solution is to leave it as it is and find someone somewhere sometime to build a single-family home there. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead. She's been waiting, sir. She has been.
Hi. I'll be very brief because I gave you all a letter. My name is Carrie Mackover, and I'm interested in villages that are really villages. I keep hearing the name village being, talked about. What I wrote about to you, and for the benefit of people here, were a concept of smaller homes. I represent Fairfield Senior Advocates. We are very interested in seeing housing for empty nesters. I'm an empty nester myself. But we don't think 3,000 square feet is an empty nester and represents downsizing. 3,000 square feet is really big. And as somebody said, we can have young families with children, and that's true, and we can have empty nesters, and that's true. But why not look for a development that is in character with the historic district, that represents smaller homes, that represents community, and that can benefit Fairfield? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So, we'll try to get to these last two people here who are been waiting in the front. You, please. Yep.
I'll be brief. My name is Ann Cadis, and I live at 996 Old Post Road. I agree with a lot of what people have said here, arguing against the approval of this zone change. But I just want to say, in addition to preserving the character of the historic district, one of my interests is in bicycle and pedestrian planning. Actually, that's my career. But I just wanted to note that the shoreline bike route, it's police commission approved, that goes along the Old Post Road. And I think when people are talking about good planning and the future of this place, and we want to keep it a place and keep the character of what makes people want to come to Fairfield to walk and bike, we should think about how curb cuts and the allowance of curb cuts, and more curb cuts equals less safety for bicycles and pedestrians. And if you've already approved a route that allows people and invites people to come along this corridor, I think that really should, I'm hoping that you would take that into consideration when you're thinking about approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'll be brief. I'm Richard Cunningham. I own the Rowland Homestead, which is a property. It's the oldest property on Old Post Road, and it is within 500 feet of this proposed site. And I would like you to deny the proposed zoning change. I have three fundamental concerns. The first one is, simply that this isn't a permitted use of land. And on that basis, I'd like you to reject this. It wasn't what was envisaged for the lot in the first place. From a traffic safety perspective, there are a number of near misses, and I heard some very careful wording by the two traffic specialists about no accidents at that area. I can tell you, I've been almost hit
probably about 5 or 6 times there while crossing that road with children at that site. And a number of my neighbors have had similar issues. So maybe people haven't been killed by vehicles there, but there have been a number of near misses. There's a number of inconsistencies mentioned by the attorney originally, certainly around this concept of empty nesters. And one thing I'd like to kind of draw on is around this entry road to the property, which is kind of only 50 feet wide, which we've already heard there'll be difficulty for kind of vehicles to enter it. There's no sidewalk on this road in the plans, if you look. So, you know, this site that supposedly marketed empty nesters to have this walkable lifestyle in Fairfield, well, what are they going to walk on? They'd have to walk down the road, they'd have to be, you know, dodging vehicles that are coming up that, you know, that proposed road in order to get out of the property, and I don't see that being particularly safe. It would create a, you know, a hairpin intersection, I think, as we heard one of the traffic specialists mention earlier. And then from a home value perspective, you know, I heard some, you know, interesting phrases about exquisite luxury. I mean, I'd ask you to look at that plan for any of you that have kind of been to, you know, the Old Post Road historic area. It's hardy plank siding. You know, that doesn't fit with the Old Post Road area, where the houses have kind of wood siding. There was a reference by, I think, one of the attorneys for the plaintiff around kind of low maintenance materials, which was inconsistent with their, you know, their claim around kind of an eco-friendly property. Balconies on the front. If you walked around kind of the Old Post Road area, how many properties have balconies in the front? None. You know, this just doesn't, you know, it doesn't fit. 40-foot height on the property, and we're talking about trees that will be 20 feet high. So what about the 20 feet above the trees? Because these properties would tower over Old Post Road. None of the surrounding properties are 3 stories high, which means you'd be able to see it from essentially the entire kind of side of the street. And then to be candid, you know, around the, you know, the kind of argument about the impacts on house prices, one of the most concerning things for me is the fact they've actually decided to call this site the Old Post Village. They're trying to force a kind of direct comparison between the Old Post Road properties and what this village will be, and it's wholly inconsistent. And clearly they're trying to do that for kind of marketing purposes to try to extract as much value as they can in kind of prices for properties that would be sold. But I'd like you to be cognizant that, you know, they're only able to do that at the expense of the house prices for the surrounding properties through kind of appraisal values. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your time letting me speak.
Thank you very much. So we're really over curfew. I mean, you want 30 seconds?
Very quick, 30 seconds. I'll be very quick. I'm here in support of the townhouses. I'm currently, my name is Pamela Pellegrini. I live in Greenfield Hill.
Thank you.
So I'm one of those that they're talking about, the empty nesters. My kids will be graduating college this spring, and we are looking to downsize. We would love to stay in Fairfield, but there's not a lot of options. This is a great option for us. Being in the community, being able to give back and be a part of the community. It's a small, actual neighborhood. I would think a neighborhood as opposed to a large, you know, apartment complex that you would have to move into. I think it's a very attractive option.
Great. Thank you very much for your comments. So we're going to adjourn for the evening. We're in the middle of public comment. So I would encourage anyone to submit written comments. We accept those as readily as we do you coming in and speaking. It's part of our record. Email them into the town. The email address is on the website. Next meeting is November 13th, November 27th. We have other things that are scheduled for the 13th, tentatively. How do you feel about moving that to the 27th? You're fine with that. Very good. So this public hearing is going to be continued until our next meeting on November 27th, which is a Tuesday after Thanksgiving. All right, not our next regularly scheduled meeting. Okay? And with that, we're going to adjourn the public hearing and adjourn the meeting.